In the year 21 of the Sosa calendar, a horrific disaster struck the kingdom of Jiangwen. Amidst the bloody chaos, the survivors began to lose their composure. Every face was etched with confusion and terror. Outside, monsters had completely surrounded humanity's final fortress, the last gathering place for those who remained. The soldiers pushed reality aside, huddling together with a flickering spark of hope. But the true nightmare had yet to appear. A deafening roar and the violent beat of wings drew everyone's gaze. Before them, countless giant monsters with overwhelming auras were descending from the sky. In an instant, a massive beast began condensing mana in its maw, then unleashed it directly toward the people below. That single strike was enough to wipe out everything. The fortress's reinforced gates were crushed into splinters. Seizing the moment, the monsters outside swarmed in like a storm, weapons drawn, threatening the safety of everyone inside. Lives were being snuffed out easier than ever before. Those colossal monsters crushed tiny lives one by one. An inescapable destiny was unfolding before our eyes. They crawled into every corner of the fortress, sending soldiers fleeing in a panicked frenzy. The corpses of fallen soldiers were scattered everywhere, yet the monsters never stopped hunting, intent on the total extinction of the human race. Amidst the smoke and fire, an urgent, worried voice rang out. Next, nearby lay the soldiers lucky enough to be rescued in time. None were lightly injured, and those still standing took turns tending to them. A soldier looking pale and grim was being treated. That same hurried voice called out again. Next. It was Chiao. He looked at the crowd and shouted, "I'll heal you. Hurry, bring the wounded here." Another man was brought over. Chiao quickly knelt, casting a healing spell. Before it's too late, he muttered. A subordinate nearby tried to stop him. "Sir Chiao, the gate is about to fall. Please run." The boy was frantic as danger closed in. "It's too dangerous for a high-ranking healer like you to be on the front lines." Those words sparked anger in Chiao. He turned and snapped. "You expect me to just abandon them?" He grit his teeth, fully aware of the responsibility on his shoulders. "As long as I keep healing, I won't let humanity perish." In that moment, Chiao remembered his parents' parting words, a message about his duty to the world. With your power, the world and everyone's lives rest in your hands. From now on, you are the world's greatest healer. Suddenly, an urgent cry pulled him from his thoughts. "Sir Chiao." Two men were looking for him at the entrance. One shouted, "Where is Sir Chiao?" Chiao looked toward the voice. Before him stood the majestic general, his arms severed, his breath fading. Chiao gasped in shock. "General." But he quickly recovered. "Lay him down here." As soon as the general was settled, a soldier asked Chiao, his voice trembling with anxiety, "Can you save him? Without him, this front line will." Chiao cut him off with a firm voice. "I will save him." He dropped to the ground and began channeling his magic. The surrounding crowd watched anxiously, the air thick with tension. Chiao spoke with absolute certainty, "Because this is why I'm here." He rapidly condensed magic around himself and the general, a blue magic circle manifesting beneath them. Then boom, a pillar of blue light erupted, stunning everyone present. That energy enveloped the general's missing arm, slowly reconstructing the limb. Joints, fingers, and even the torn flesh began to knit back together. Once the arm was fully restored, the blue light gradually faded away. The general slowly opened his eyes and sat up, his arm perfectly healed. The soldiers nearby erupted in cheers. As expected of Sir Chiao, the general is awake. The general stared blankly at the arm that had been severed, now without a single scar. Seeing this, Chiao smiled with relief. "No matter how grave the wound, I will heal it all," he said. "Now, humanity's victory is surely within reach." The general didn't answer. He just stared intensely at his hand, his pupils twitching. Suddenly, he threw a heavy punch straight into Chiao's face. Caught off guard, Chiao took the full force of the blow. The general clenched his fist until his knuckles turned white, his voice dripping with irritation. "You just did something completely unnecessary." The soldiers and Chiao were stunned, unable to grasp the situation. Clutching his face, Chiao looked up at him. "What? Why did you punch me?" A brave soldier spoke up. "General, what the hell are you doing?" But the general looked even more enraged. "Shut up," he roared, swiftly drawing the sword at his hip. Chiyo froze as he watched the general's movements. The man plunged the blade deep into Chiyo's shoulder. Chiyo screamed in agony. The general's crazed expression and words terrified him. A murderous glint flashed in the man's eyes. Is it this arm? Why couldn't you just let me die? The general pressed the sword harder into his shoulder, making Chiyo tremble from the pain. He screamed, his voice filled with fear and despair. What does a back row healer like you know? Our pain, the sheer despair of facing those monsters. He glared savagely at Chiyo, teeth gnashing. Just when I thought it was finally over, you brought me back. How many more arms do we have to lose? He pointed toward the soldiers, his voice heavy with resentment and exhaustion. Everyone here feels the same. They don't want to fight anymore. Chiyo looked at the soldiers, his eyes widening in shock. He was surrounded by broken men. Not a single one was whole. Some had broken arms, others were blinded, and many just lay there, paralyzed by fatigue and agony. Confusion clouded Chiyo's face. The general's words echoed in his mind. This can't be. I saved as many as I could. Does he mean everything I did was meaningless? A painful truth slapped him in the face, making the physical pain fade. As he realized the general was right, all his sweat, effort, and tears, even coming to the front lines, it was all for nothing. The general finally pulled the sword from Chiyo's shoulder, making him grit his teeth in pain. I don't care if you're the world's greatest healer, the man said. I've had enough of you. He turned to leave, throwing one last comment over his shoulder. Humanity is doomed anyway. If you want to fight, do it yourself. Chiyo called out desperately, but, he practically screamed, how is a healer supposed to use attack magic? His voice cracked with fear. Without you, this place will. But the general no longer cared about the fate of humanity. He just walked away. At that moment, the dragon outside let out a savage roar. A fireball condensed in its maw, and then, boom, it blasted the fortress, destroying almost everything. The room Chiyo was in was blown apart. Walls crumbled, and dust filled the air. The general was pinned under a massive stone, gasping for breath. He managed to wheeze out, run. But then another heavy weight crushed him, making him scream in agony before everything exploded. Chiyo opened his eyes and tried to look around. He finally realized the truth. The dragon had landed right in front of him. It flared its wings, growling hungrily. Staring at the creature, Chiyo realized too late. Is this the kind of monster the people I saved had to face? He let out a bitter laugh, his eyes filled with absolute despair. It's true. All this time, I only watched from the back. Chiyo reached up and gripped his wounded shoulder, his hand shaking uncontrollably. Damn it. All that effort learning healing magic was a waste. Memories flooded his mind, leaving him in a state of turmoil. Despite his genius for healing magic, despite being hailed as the world's greatest healer, he grit his teeth, a surge of anger and helplessness rising within him. I should have been the one fighting. In that moment, Chiyo grabbed a rock nearby. Knowing he couldn't win, he charged anyway. A deep regret filled his heart. If only I could go back to that day. Chiyo rushed the monster, clutching the tiny stone, his face set with determination. Then I would definitely. But there were no miracles. The dragon lunged at Chiyo. All that remained were his if-onlys, as his life was swallowed whole. Those wandering thoughts drifted away, blending with his chaotic emotions. Then, Chiyo opened his eyes once more. He bolted upright, eyes darting around. The familiar scenery hit him, leaving him stunned. He looked at the table beside him. An admission guide. If this is here, that means. Chiyo couldn't believe his eyes. He scrambled outside. Before him was a peaceful scene, people chatting happily. Could it be? Is this that day from 5 years ago? He stood frozen, his face blank with shock. He had returned to the year 16 of the Sosa calendar. The day the man who would become the world's greatest healer, began his journey. He looked around in confusion. I should have died by that dragon's hand. An academy specializing in healing magic, but this is 1 week before enrollment at Heli Academy. Chiyo held the admission papers, his voice weary. I have no idea what happened. The final memories of his past life flashed like a reminder. But if my dying wish was granted, then I know exactly what I need to do. He crumpled the notification paper in his grip. His face hardened with resolve, his voice steady. I'm enrolling in an academy for attack magic. Qatar Academy. Chiyo stood still, lost in thought. In a world where healers can't use offensive spells, a fact every mage knows, I have to break that prejudice. There will be many obstacles to overcome. Memories of the past resurfaced, but I still have my memories, along with the master-level healing magic I perfected. If I use them to their full potential, I can change the future. With firm determination, he quickly set a goal. His eyes flashed with certainty. By my own strength, I will save this world. To start his plan, the first step was school. First, I must get into Qatar Academy, the best offensive magic school in the world. Will remembered many things about Qatar. Its superior training program was said to turn anyone into a true combat mage. Someone he met in his past life also came from Qatar. But then he realized something. Their methods are top secret. You can only learn them once you're inside. The biggest problem for Chio was his status as a healer. He closed his eyes, thinking hard. There's never been a precedent for a healer enrolling there. What should I do? Suddenly, a plan struck him. Use money. Qatar can train anyone into a top-tier attack mage, so I've heard nobles occasionally use bribes to shove their talentless kids in. But that thought died instantly. He had just regressed. Where would he get that kind of money? He looked around the room, sighing. If only I could have brought my gold back with me. Though money was useless at the end of the world, the rewards I earned serving the kingdom would have lasted a lifetime. Realizing he was at a dead end, he grew more anxious. Even if I start working now, I won't make it in time for enrollment. Think, damn it. Suddenly, a gentle voice called out to him. Will, are you awake? A beautiful girl walked in, smiling at him. He was stunned. Tears welled up in his eyes as he stared at her. That's right. I've returned to the past. At this time, she's still alive. Seeing him like that, she was surprised. What's wrong? Does your stomach hurt? Will waved his hands frantically, trying to explain. No, I just got some dust in my eye. Good morning, sis. She smiled sweetly and replied, Good morning. He watched her for a long time, a new thought forming. In this life, I will definitely prevent the tragedy that befell her. With my healing magic, I can save those I couldn't save before. Suddenly he shouted, That's it. Will was so excited he beamed at her, grinning like an idiot. Thanks, sis. Because of you, I figured it out. His reaction left her bewildered. What are you talking about? But Will didn't explain. He just rushed out, leaving her with a quick, I'm going out for a bit. I'll tell you everything when I get back. She sighed helplessly. Goodness, make sure you're back for dinner. Meanwhile, at the Magic Academy Alliance, the organization that oversees all academies in the kingdom and makes all educational decisions. At this time, the chairman of the alliance was also serving as the headmaster of Qatar Academy. However, at some point, the chairman stopped appearing at the alliance. The reason was, the scene shifted to a vast palace. Moonlight filtered in, and Dijian sat by Maji's bed, her face flushed with a high fever. He reached out to touch Maji's distressed face, his eyes filled with worry and tenderness. Maji, this man was the chairman of the Magic Academy Alliance and headmaster of Qatar Academy, and Dijian Gongjian. And Dijian's gaze turned sorrowful. I'm sorry, the healer today wasn't good enough either. But I will find someone who can cure you, I promise. So please, just hold on a little longer. During this period, the chairman was always by his granddaughter's side, tending to her grave illness. However, the healing magic of that era couldn't cure her. He sat by Maji's bed, sobbing, and eventually, the girl passed away. But that was in the past life. A voice called out from the window. How about you let me handle that? Startled by the strange youth, he asked suspiciously, Who are you? And Dijian quickly recognized him. If I recall correctly, you're Will, the scholarship student from Heli, right? Will hopped in through the window. You know me, sir? The man raised a hand and explained, Your talent for healing magic is famous throughout the Alliance. Though I didn't expect you to be the type to climb through windows. Will scratched his head awkwardly, thinking, the old me definitely wouldn't have done this. I guess dying once made me a lot bolder. He got straight to the point. There's no time for her, or for me. He reached toward Maji with absolute confidence. I can cure her. And Dijian looked at him with suspicion and caution. What are you plotting? Will extended his hand, his voice urgent. We can talk about that later. First, please let me treat her. The disease has progressed further than I thought. His eyes were filled with worry and resolve as he met in Dijian's scrutinizing gaze. The man finally agreed, making Will sigh in relief. Fine. Let's see what you can do. They sat opposite each other by Maji's bed. Will looked a bit tense, and Dijin was watching him with an incredibly sharp, judging gaze. That look is terrifying. It's like he's ready to end me if I make one mistake. I guess that's the level of a combat magic academy headmaster. Will took a deep breath to calm himself. He carefully took Maji's hand. A soft, healing light radiated, filling the entire room. Will focused intensely on the magic circle. My mana has decreased since I returned, but I remember the healing formulas perfectly. Seeing Maji's complexion improve, he thought, the formula to treat this yoga disease won't be invented for another 2 years. But with my current abilities, she slowly, gradually opened her eyes. Will let out a long sigh of relief. Thank goodness. He flashed a bright smile. You're going to be okay now. Looking at his handsome face, she blushed instinctively. But you're still weak, so make sure to rest, okay? She turned away shyly and whispered, okay. And Dijin asked anxiously, Maji, do you really feel all right? Maji smiled happily and replied, yes, Grandpa. I can't remember the last time I felt this healthy. His eyes glistened with tears of joy as he looked at her lovingly. He stroked her head. I see. I understand. Moonlight shone through the window. What a relief. The scene shifted to Will and Dijin talking in the living room. Thank you. If there is anything I can do, I will help you to the best of my ability. Will didn't hesitate. Thank you very much. This isn't just a request, sir. He made his demand. As you can see, my healing magic has already reached its peak. I have nothing left to learn in that field. He placed a hand over his heart and spoke firmly. So, please, let me enroll in Qatar Academy. The man asked awkwardly. You want to enter an attack magic academy instead of using your healing talent? Do you understand what that implies? Will replied with unwavering resolve. Of course I do. And Dijin looked into Will's ambitious eyes. That gaze. He suddenly stood up, surprising Will. Perhaps my authority exists for this very day. Looking at Will's determined face, he spoke. I will make it happen. The two stood and shook hands. I approve your enrollment. Will gripped his hand firmly. The scene shifted to a room where a man was muttering to himself. That damn old fox. I thought he just came back suddenly, but then he pulls a stunt like this. He picked up a piece of paper. A healer wants to keep up with Qatar's curriculum? A pampered healer like that. The paper was Will's enrollment form, recommended by Dijin. On opening day, rows of students stood in the courtyard, and Dijin stood on the podium with a solemn expression. Qatar Academy, a unique boarding school specializing in offensive magic. It boasted a massive campus with countless training grounds, laboratories, and even a giant library. Its alumni were influential, and the school received full support from the kingdom. There was no better place to learn attack magic. No healer had ever enrolled before, so I know countless hardships await me. But if I study here, Will smiled hopefully, I can become an attack mage too. Images of his friends and comrades' deaths from his past life flashed by. And finally, his own death. Right here, right now, his life begins a new chapter. His own destiny. After enrolling, Will's face was twisted in a grimace during class, a far cry from his earlier brightness. The professor stood nearby. Begin. Will raised his hand toward a straw dummy. Yes, sir. A magic circle appeared before his palm, and flames began to flicker out. It feels like the mana is condensed. Chio shouted loudly. But the flames didn't launch as expected. Only smoke billowed from his palm. Ignoring the mockery from the other students, the professor calmly remarked, failed again today. Then he strictly handed down a punishment. Until you can blast that target with basic attack magic, don't even think about coming to class. Go to the training ground behind the building and practice by yourself. Will protested. Can't you just teach me the right way? I don't know how to practice like this. The man pushed up his glasses and said coldly, teaching a healer is a waste of time. But if you won't give up, Will suggested, then at least let me study theory in the library. The man replied indifferently, we don't have books for healers here. Disobey, and you'll be punished. While they were arguing, someone summoned a flame and smirked. He threw the fire at Will's back. Get out of the way. Will fell face first onto the ground. He pushed himself up, his body trembling. What the hell was that? The culprit looked down at him with disdain. Can't even dodge that. Anpu smirked arrogantly. This is an attack magic academy. There's no room for weaklings who can't even protect themselves. He looked down his nose at Will. In other words, getting hit is your own fault. Will was momentarily stunned. The professor chimed in with a sneer. Onpu is right. Wouldn't it be better if you just crawled back to a healing academy? Seeing the teacher agree, Onpu grew even bolder. Go there and let those gentle healers comfort you. Amidst the laughter, Will just silently frowned in annoyance. Late that night, at the training ground, Will sat on a bench, sighing deeply. He looked up and muttered to himself, "There's no sign that I can learn attack magic at all." He wasn't too surprised by the situation. I knew it would be hard. The reason is that healing magic and attack magic use different power sources. Mages convert their mental mana through formulas to activate spells, and the nature of mana is determined by one's state of mind. Attack magic uses active mana to create fire or explosions. Healers, who only have passive mana, can't use them. But Qatar has a secret to training top-tier attack mages from scratch. Among those methods, there must be a way to train active mana. I'm pretty confident in my mana control, so if I learned that trick, I thought I could convert passive mana to active mana. But, recalling this afternoon, he felt helpless. I didn't expect to be banned from class entirely. Do the students and teachers really look down on healers this much? Then he bolted upright. But I can't give up. The image of a young woman appeared in his mind. She said her mana was tiny at first, but she honed it at Qatar. Choosing Qatar definitely wasn't a mistake. Will rubbed his chin, planning. Anyway, charging in blindly won't help. I'm still not allowed in the library. Should I just sneak in? Suddenly, someone shouted, "Hey you, what are you still doing here?" Startled, he blurted out, "I'm sorry." He awkwardly rubbed his head and turned around. His eyes suddenly went wide with shock. A breeze swept past. The sound of boots echoed in the quiet space. Blue eyes peeked out from behind white hair. Finally, her face was revealed under the moonlight. Will stood frozen and called out, "Professor Veronica?" How did he know her? Because in his past life, he had fought side by side with Veronica on the battlefield. She was a top-tier attack mage, and in the end, they had shared a painful farewell. Will was secretly overjoyed. I didn't expect to meet her again in this life. How nostalgic. Her magic sword could cleave through anything in its path. Just as he thought that, he shouted in alarm at the current situation. "Wait, she's drawing her sword." Veronica replied matter-of-factly, "There's a suspicious student here, so of course I have to be on guard." She began her interrogation. "What are you doing? Planning trouble? Or just practicing?" Will assessed the situation. "She's not like those bullies. I absolutely cannot get beaten up here." He waved his hands frantically. "I was just practicing." Only then did Veronica sheath her sword. "Good then." They chatted for a bit. "You're Veronica, right?" "I am." "But," she gave him a reminder, "do you always address your teachers so casually?" Will instinctively apologized before realizing, "I'm sorry." "Teacher." In his past life, she wasn't much older than him. Seeing his confused face, Veronica explained, "I skipped grades and became a teacher right after. Starting this year." Will scratched his cheek. "I see." Internally, he thought, Professor Veronica, with her talent, it makes sense. His eyes filled with determination. This is my chance. He wanted her to teach him attack magic, though he wasn't sure if the plan would work. He spoke his request clearly. "I want to enroll in your class, Professor. What do I need to do to join?" Veronica placed a hand on her chest and politely declined. "Sorry, but I haven't been assigned any classes yet. I skipped so many grades that I rarely attend normal lectures. This year, I'm acting as a teaching assistant to answer student questions." They thought students would feel more comfortable talking to someone their own age. However, she looked puzzled. "I don't understand why no one has come to ask me anything." Will could only give a forced smile. He knew exactly why. Everyone's probably terrified of her sword-first attitude. But this was an even better opportunity. "I can freely ask Professor Veronica for guidance." Feeling motivated, Will asked, "Then may I ask a question?" Veronica calmly accepted. "Of course. That is my job, after all." Will got serious. "I'll be blunt. In your opinion, what does a healer need to do to master attack magic?" She fell silent, pondering the answer. Her eyes suddenly flashed with sharpness. "I also felt something strange in your mana flow." "So you're that freshman everyone's talking about?" Will was surprised she knew. "You've heard of me?" "I have. A healer studying attack magic is rare. I've never heard of a teacher like that." Will return to the main topic. But I heard Qatar has a method to refine active mana from scratch. If that method exists, then even I could use active mana. Veronica turned her head and delivered the news. That method exists, and I can teach you. Will brightened up. Really? Then. But she continued, however, Veronica explained clearly, it's still impossible for you to use attack magic. The amount of passive mana in your body is already too massive. At this level, even if you refine active mana, it will just dissolve into that sea of passive mana. Even if you use another way to refine it, once it mixes with passive mana, attack magic formulas won't function normally. Will asked unwillingly, no way. Is there really no way for a healer to use attack magic? The answer was, as far as I know, no. A promising lead was cut off, leaving Will in a terrible mood. Damn it, my plan is ruined. But I can't give up here. If there's no way, I'll create one. But then he forced a calm smile to say goodbye. Thank you very much. I'll think about this some more on my own. But as he turned to leave, she spoke up. Wait, I wasn't finished. It's true a healer can't use attack magic. However, there is still a way for a healer to become an attack mage. Confused, Will asked, what do you mean? Veronica gave an example. This is an iron sword. If you swing it, you can cut down and defeat an enemy. Her hand brushed the back of a chair. Then she posed a hypothetical. And this is a wooden chair. You sit on it. Though he didn't quite get it, Will followed along. To his surprise, Veronica lifted the chair effortlessly. But even this chair, if you swing it and use it to strike, you can knock someone down. Right. Will was internally horrified. With those skinny arms of yours. Setting the chair down, she continued, you don't think of using it that way because it was made for a different purpose. But you have the freedom to use it however you want. These hands are the same. Veronica gently stroked Will's flushed face. I can pat your head gently like this. Her fingers brushed his lips, and then she flicked his forehead with sharp precision. Or I can make you hurt. Seeing Will's intense reaction, she asked, sorry. Did I overdo it? He replied painfully, I'm fine. Finally, Veronica summarized, the key is the application. Anything can be a weapon depending on how you use it. Will seem to realize something. Wait, use healing magic to attack. She nodded, satisfied with his quick understanding. A student asks, a teacher answers. It's strange, isn't it? Why didn't you think of that until I mentioned it? She whispered. It's because of the nature of your mindset and the difference in innate mana. That's why attack mages aren't interested in healing, and vice versa. But you might be different. The fact that you actively enrolled in an attack magic academy proves you're an exception. In fact, your mana doesn't look like a pure healer's. Hearing this, Will looked at his palm thoughtfully. Not like a healer's? I didn't even notice. But could it be because I regressed? A sword was drawn and placed right against Will's neck. You need to re-examine it, Veronica said seriously. That intense desire to fight inside you. If you can do that, your healing magic will surely crush any enemy. After that night's lesson, time passed. The next day, standing on the training ground, he couldn't help but remember last night. Professor Veronica's examples were certainly unique. But it was like I'd been enlightened. Why doesn't Professor Veronica have any prejudice against healers? It's strange that she has a theory connecting healing and attack magic. It's almost as if, suddenly, the professor called out a nickname. Hey, healer. Will just cursed internally. Now they won't even use my name. The man looked at his list and said, in today's class, we'll have one-on-one duels. Since we have an odd number of students, you'll be participating too. Will could only listen helplessly. Whether you can't use attack magic is your problem. Whatever the outcome, you brought it on yourself. A sinister smirk played on the professor's lips. I've finished the pairings. The match is you against Anpu. Hearing the other boys' amused laughter, Will didn't even get angry. This setup is so obvious. His eyes flashed sharply as he looked at his opponent. Anpu Omen. I heard he's the son of a prestigious noble family, always surrounded by lackeys. From what I've seen in class, this guy has the skills of a real attack mage. He's not just relying on his family name. Anpu showed his usual disdain. Healing magic can't cure humiliation, right? After I beat you to a pulp, are you going to go home and cry to your mommy? Facing such cruel words, Will's lip twitched in anger. That personality. If I were my past self, I probably wouldn't care. But I have to admit, this guy really gets on my nerves. I also want to test Professor Veronica's theory from yesterday. I guess I'll push back a little. Having decided, he raised his hand. Professor. What? The man assumed. I'm not accepting any forfeits. His tone was mocking. Forfeit? No way. I just have a small proposal. He thought to himself, I get it. I'm not suited for attack magic, just like you said. Continuing like this is a waste of time. So, if I lose this match, Will said, dropping a bombshell, I'll drop out of Qatar. The professor wasn't surprised. Instead, he praised him. A wise decision. But Will wasn't done. In exchange, if I win, will you allow me to attend the regular classes? The man's joy vanished. Don't be delusional. But Anpu laughed loudly and agreed. Fine by me. A weakling challenging the strong. He probably needs that hollow delusion to stay calm in the face of fear. This puny kid needs it. Besides, it's no fun if there's nothing to crush. Left with no choice, the professor accepted Will's proposal. Discussing impossible theories is a waste of time. Fine. He raised both hands. Both of you in position. Then he signaled the start of the match. Begin. An aura of mana erupted from Anpu. As a magic circle appeared, daggers began to manifest. He was extremely proud of this technique. Look closely. This is my creation magic. These countless blades will skewer you. Anpu shouted as he launched the daggers. What can a failure who can't even use basic attack magic do? As danger approached, Will calmly pressed his fingertips together. A magic circle appeared between his hands. His eyes turned a shade of blue. Will calmly dodged the incoming daggers. Seeing him dodge so easily, Anpu gasped, What? The nature of my healing magic is the manipulation of life. I regulate the target's vital activities and heal them by maximizing their recovery. But recovery isn't the only thing we can manipulate. If I shift it into an offensive form, Anpu assumed it was just luck. You're getting cocky just because you dodged once. Will didn't bother arguing, silently adjusting his mana. Physical enhancement. His hand caught a flying dagger. Then he used magic to redirect its trajectory. The daggers fell to the ground from the impact. But one dagger remained in Will's hand. Perfect timing. The blade glinted in the sunlight. His face was full of confidence. I'll borrow this for a second. The sudden reversal stunned everyone. What? What just happened? Was that attack magic? I thought he only knew healing. Will corrected them in his head. It's not attack magic. I'm using healing magic to attack. I guess they can't tell the difference. The most shocked person was Anpu. Summoning more daggers, he made an excuse. I was just holding back. I can increase the number even more. There's no way an attack mage loses to a healer. Will easily use the dagger to block the others. The blades were completely shattered. Anpu grew increasingly frantic. It's not just about numbers. The dagger transformed into a giant sword. Grow. Seeing this, Will calmly assessed him. He's actually strong. His understanding of his unique magic is high. Anpu added another skill. Now, I'll add rotation. He was incredibly confident. How's this? With this move. But Will simply raise the small blade and block the tip of the massive, spinning sword. This sight was too unbelievable for Anpu. Anpu grit his teeth, struggling. He poured all his mana into the sword. Will thought, I should probably boost my physical enhancement a bit more. With that thought, he swiped the giant sword, sending it flying into the sky. As the sword stabbed into the ground, Anpu's voice rang out in disbelief. No way. In the blink of an eye, Will appeared behind him and smiled. I'll give you a proper treatment later, so forgive me for this. The blade glinted as the sun hit it. But something suddenly blocked his view, and someone shouted, That's enough. Will quickly backed away. Anpu was so terrified, he collapsed onto the ground. A massive rock suddenly appeared in the training ground. The professor's voice trembled slightly. There's another match. Both of you stop now. The two stared at each other. Then Will cheerfully reminded him of the condition. I can join the regular classes now, right? The man was clearly annoyed, snorting coldly. Do whatever you want. Having achieved his goal, Will beamed. Thank you very much, Professor. And just like that, he left the class. Then, I'll be going now. As he walked away, Will pondered. That feeling just now. This is my own style of attack magic. It's more effective than I thought. I defeated a talented attack mage of my own age. Thanks to Professor Veronica, I can use healing magic to fight. Finally, the plan was a success. The school's flag fluttered in the wind. On the other side, Anpu suppressed his rage. Professor, this was just an accident during class. It's fine. Besides, I don't want to report every little thing to my father. The professor didn't know what to say. Anpu, a murderous glint appeared in the boy's eyes. You understand what I'm saying, right, Professor? The man habitually pushed up his glasses. Of course I do. A sinister smile curled his lips. We can't let a healer get too cocky. Later, in a classroom with quite a few students, Will felt a bit nervous. Finally, I'm in class. I'll learn everything about attack magic. As the door opened, it drew many students' attention. The person who walked in was quite familiar. He just glanced up and looked away. The professor stepped onto the podium. All right, let's begin the magic tool crafting class. Since you're new, the content is still basic, and the homeroom teacher will handle multiple subjects. Today's lecture is magic tool crafting. The Healing Academy had something similar. He smiled to himself. How nostalgic. As he spoke, the teacher drew on the board. Today, we'll be making bombs. I'll hand out the materials. Assemble them according to the steps and remember to infuse them with mana. In my past life, I only made recovery items like potions. An attack academy is different, it's all weapons. They probably think I'll use active mana, but the nature of mana is what matters in crafting. Most of the function comes from the materials anyway. Will opened his bag. I should still be able to handle this. Inside were 2 items, a golem ice shard and a fire branch. He opened his book to check the info. Let's see. Mix the fire branch powder with the golem ice shard. Suddenly, the ice shard emitted a strange mana. Will immediately noticed. This is... Without hesitation, he stood up and used physical enhancement to hurl the shard away. An explosion rocked the classroom. A massive block of ice appeared on the wall. The initial panic slowly subsided. The professor's scream rang out. Hey, you! What the hell do you think you're doing? Will tried to stay calm and explain. No, sir. It activated on its own before I could even infuse mana. But the man wouldn't listen. No excuses. I'm deducting points. A sound came from behind him. He turned to see Anpu and his group snickering. Golden eyes flashed in the shadows. Will sensed something was very wrong here. Then came the next class. On the desk was a creature trapped in a cage. Next is mythical creatures. A boy and a beast stared at each other. Will sat alone at a desk in the front row. The reason? Those with low grades sit in the front. Pay attention. His body went stiff. Being this close to a salamander, it seemed to be trembling violently. The salamander suddenly spat fire at him, but Will had anticipated it and blocked it with a pan. The professor asked, confused, "Why did you bring a pan?" "I thought it might come in handy," Will replied confidently. But the man confiscated it. As the beast in the cage edged closer, Will leaned back. He was now certain. So that's how it is. They let me into the class, but they have no intention of letting me study properly. Now what should I do? In the corner of the room, a student sat looking quite tense. She seemed anxious as she glanced at him. After that, the harassment continued. On the training ground, Anpu fired a blast at Will, making the excuse, "Oops, my hand slipped." Next, in class, the professor demanded, "Now, solve this problem." Will hesitated. "I haven't learned this part yet." The man used it to bully him. Failing to keep up is your fault. Points deducted. Even outside of class, trash was piled in front of his room. The dorm manager also stepped in to punish him. "I heard you have a bad attitude in class. Your punishment is no dinner." Will complained, "This is so unfair." At the academy dormitory, in Will's room, he lay exhausted on his bed. "Everyone in the academy is hostile toward me. Only a few days in, and I've faced so many obstacles. There's still a mountain of challenges ahead." Will raised his hand, thinking with determination, "I'm making progress, step by step. I can't let these bullies discourage me forever." Images of that duel resurfaced. Besides, for the first time, I fought with my own hands and won. A spark of hope remained in his heart. I can become an attack mage. After cheering himself up, Will sat up to study. Finally, I have the textbooks. Time to review today's lesson. The next day, the classroom was pitifully empty. Looking at the clock again, he felt something was off. It's time, but the teacher still isn't here. In this strange situation, Will instinctively looked around. Aside from me, there's only that girl. It seems they changed the classroom without telling us. Left with no choice, he stood up. No point staying here. He carefully spoke to the girl, and she jumped in surprise. Will scratched his cheek and shared his guess. Maybe the next class changed rooms. Ezuka looked down and agreed. I think so too. Her next words caught his attention. Since you're the only one here, the one both the teachers and students shun, I can guess what happened. An aura of gloom surrounded her, as if mushrooms were growing from her. I guess I'm in the same boat as you. Ezuka's voice was dejected. Since we're both outcasts, let's be friends. Will was surprised, assessing his classmate. She looks gloomy but speaks sharply. Then he reached out with a bright smile. Anyway, I'm glad to make a new friend. Nice to meet you. She let out an exclamation. How refreshing. She immediately stood up and shook his hand. I look forward to your help. The girl introduced herself. My name is Ezuka Karen. Will scratched his head, a bit embarrassed. Ezuka is my first friend at this academy. Ezuka politely waved it off. It's understandable, Will. You rarely come to class, and above all, you're a healer. Everyone says healers are just weaklings. Hearing that, he froze. She gave a bitter laugh. Well, I attend every class, and I'm a proper attack mage, yet I don't have a single friend either. Will reflected on her words. Setting aside her personality, the prejudice against healers is truly deep-rooted. Those attack mages who fight on the front lines and earn glory often look down on healers. In my past life, I was recognized as the kingdom's healer early on, so I never tasted this kind of discrimination. But at an academy specializing in attack magic, that attitude is extremely harsh. Studying here means I have to fight against that prejudice too. She hesitated for a moment before finally asking, Why did you come to Qatar, Will? He repeated the question. Why, you ask? The answer had been ready for a long time, so he said it without thinking. Because being born a healer. I realized that's no excuse to give up. But Ezuka tilted her head, not quite understanding. He just gave a forced smile. I have my own reasons. What about you, Ezuka? Why are you here? Surprised to be asked, she answered awkwardly. Me? I come from a small noble family in the countryside. But since there's no son, my parents worry the lineage will die out. So they thought if I made a name for myself as an attack mage, I could succeed as a female head of the family. That reason wasn't hard to understand. I see. Graduating from Qatar will definitely help you with that. Ezuka shared her worries sadly. But the problem is, I have almost zero talent for attack magic. Because of that, I have no friends. Going to class is like torture. Basically, it's as bad as it gets. But then she happily clapped her hands. But now I have a friend. Although she was smiling brightly, her words weren't bright at all. With you here, Will, someone even lower than me, I don't feel worried anymore. Even if my grades are a bit low. Will couldn't help but think, how can she say that with such a cheerful face? They continued their friendly chat. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me. Thanks, I know you mean well. As he turned, he smiled and said, But things might not go the way you think, Ezuka. A cryptic comment that the dense girl didn't understand at all. What does that mean? But Will didn't answer her. Come on, let's go find the classroom. The two walked out of the room together. Wait for me. After some searching, they finally entered the correct room. Here it is. Finally found it. As soon as they entered, the professor scolded them. You're late. The class started ages ago. Amidst the laughter of the others, they both said, We're sorry. We didn't know the room had changed. But of course, he wouldn't let it slide. No excuses. Seeming to think of something, a smirk touched the professor's lips. Since you're here, he pointed to an extremely complex diagram on the board. Solve this. Ezuka felt indignant. This isn't fair. We just got here, how could we know? Especially since Will hasn't attended a single class. Will just stared at the board silently, showing no reaction. The professor added, If you solve it correctly, I'll overlook your lateness. Naturally, if you're wrong, points will be deducted. Anpu sat below, resting his chin on his hand with a sneer. At this rate, he'll fail the course soon. To everyone's surprise, Will picked up the chalk. The sound of chalk clicking against the board echoed through the room. He wrote nonstop, leaving Ezuka stunned. Anpu thought, he's probably just guessing randomly. It's useless. Finally, after a while, the chalk stopped. The solved magic circle glowed with a faint light. Will asked with a hint of pride, How's that, Professor? The man couldn't believe it, leaning in close to the board. His eyes went wide with shock. After checking it over, he had to admit, Correct. Take your seat. Anpu had the strongest reaction. What? As Will sat down, Ezuka wondered curiously why. She looked at him as he sat there with a smug, self-satisfied grin. Will, how did you solve that? After class, during the break, she leaned in close. The curiosity she'd been holding back finally burst out. Hey, how did you solve that problem? Will remembered the moment and replied, how? It looked complicated, but it was actually just an application of an example from the textbook. I read ahead on my own. Ezuka's eyes nearly popped out. What? She slammed the desk, unable to believe it. You self-studied the textbook? Her intense reaction made him instinctively shrink back. Yeah, the reason is simple. I only read it for the first time yesterday, but Qatar's curriculum is impressive. It's the #1 attack magic academy for a reason. The knowledge is very effective and systematic, from basic to advanced. If I master this, I'll easily surpass the level of an average attack mage. Still, without magic talent, just reading it would be difficult. I was already a good student in my past life, so that mindset and knowledge helped me absorb attack magic quite quickly. Listening to him, a complex feeling rose in Ezuka's heart. A healer can do that? Well, who exactly are you? The former world's greatest healer. While she was trembling with her thoughts, Will was still nodding at his own hard work. Learning attack magic is actually quite addictive. I ended up reading late into the night. Ezuka's face turned pale. The content is incredibly difficult, though. You're supposed to have a teacher guide you. Will, I thought you were a delinquent student. With that assumption, she grabbed his sleeve, crying. Am I the only one at the bottom of the class? Am I going to be bullied? No, don't leave me behind. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder to comfort her. It's okay. I'll explain anything you don't understand. Will seemed to be radiating a sparkling aura. We're friends, right? Hearing that, her mood improved significantly. Thank you. Despite his sweet words, he was secretly thinking, of course, I didn't come to this school to make friends. But with Ezuka's help, I can get more done. Will hesitated before making a proposal. In exchange, can you do me a favor? After all, class isn't just about theory. Having calmed down, Ezuka remembered. Oh right, next is basic attack magic. Images of the training ground flashed back. Right, the subject I always fail. The reason I was kicked out of all the classes. She now assumed. But you can do it now, right? You even beat on Pooh. He had to be honest. I can't. Seriously, I still can't use basic attack magic. Hearing that, she grew worried. Then, he clenched his fist, speaking positively. But I have a way. He shifted the focus to her. That's why I need your help, Ezuka. On the training ground, students stood in neat rows. While standing there, he recalled the basic knowledge he knew. In attack magic, there is basic magic and unique magic. Basic attack magic is designed so anyone can use it just by analyzing the formula. Memorize the formula, and you can use it. He used Ampu's magic as an example. Magic that only a specific person can use is called unique magic. Even in Qatar's curriculum, they separate basic attack magic classes from those meant to hone one's unique magic. Since there's no standard answer for the latter, even I can participate by using healing magic to attack. While he was lost in thought, the homeroom teacher stood right in front of him. But with the former, if I can't use basic attack magic, there's no way I'll pass. This time, the man looked quite confident. Theory seems fine, but practice is a different story. You'll fail this course if you can't use basic attack magic. Will didn't argue, simply replying, yes, sir. The professor led him to a straw dummy in the distance. The test is the same as always. Use the basic attack magic fireball to create a ball of fire and hit that target. He crossed his arms, both mocking and reminding him. I'll say it again, this is the basic of basics. If you can't even do this, I can't let you pass or graduate. The professor's eyes narrowed as he remembered the duel. I saw you use healing magic in that mock battle the other day. I've heard that the body moves more fluidly after being healed. But you can't even use a single basic attack spell. Reading the man's thoughts, Will suddenly smirked. A talentless hack like you should just get out of my class. The professor caught that expression. Did he just laugh? Red and orange light reflected in the man's wide, shocked eyes. Because at that moment, a flame appeared in Will's palm. What? How can you use magic? While everyone was gossiping, the one causing the scene chuckled to himself. Nice. They didn't notice. Rewinding to a moment before class, his proposal was, I asked Ezuka to create a fireball using basic attack magic. Then I transferred it into a salamander's tail. I don't know how we got a salamander's tail, but the way the fire appeared was, I hid it in my hand while constantly healing it so the tail wouldn't burn up. They discussed the method. But doesn't it hurt? I'm a healer. If I keep healing it, this is nothing. Back to the present. Then, right before unleashing the move, I used healing magic to activate the tail's fire sac, making it look like a fireball was created on the spot. With that thought, we'll lightly launch the flame toward the target. The red circle was completely incinerated. While the professor stood there agape, Will asked calmly, "How's that, Professor?" The man recalled the scene and silently confirmed it. It was definitely fire. No doubt about it. Basic attack magic. Did this kid really learn how to use attack magic? The professor crossed his arms, feigning composure. You passed. Step back. Will nodded obediently. Thank you very much, sir. In the crowd, the one who helped with the plan was just as surprised as everyone else. And someone else was gnashing their teeth because Will had successfully summoned fire. In a classroom, Anpu shouted at the man in front of him. What the hell is going on? The professor rested his chin on his hand, puzzled. I'd like to know that too. How did that guy suddenly learn attack magic? Anpu's attitude was no longer mocking. I don't care about that. Just remembering that annoying smile on his punchable face. Anpu was fuming. That guy dared to defy me. And he's a healer. I can't stand being in the same class as him. If I tell my father, he might even dissolve this entire class. Hearing that, the man snapped out of it. Wait. Anpu turned to leave, dumping the problem on him. Just use whatever method you want. Just get him out of my sight. And so, the unpleasant conversation ended, leaving the professor troubled. Doing something outside of class is high risk if I get caught. This isn't like bullying noble students. Do you know what I had to do to become a teacher at this academy? But I have to take the risk to protect my position. A healer acting so high and mighty. I don't want to know what the other teachers will say. I won't let a 15-year-old healer ruin my life. This time, he had to make a meticulous plan. There's no other way. I have to take matters into my own hands. At the training ground after class, Will asked confusedly, What's wrong, sir? Why did you call me here? The professor didn't answer, instead offering a sarcastic remark. You seem quite confident lately. Will rubbed his head with a laugh. It's all thanks to you, sir. He received a look of contempt. Idiot. I wasn't praising you. The man brought up his past record. You're getting arrogant. But what about this? Since you enrolled, you've missed quite a few of my classes. How do you plan to make up for that? A drop of sweat rolled down Will's face. I was going to ask whose fault that was. But then he obediently gave a solid answer. I borrowed materials from a friend and reviewed everything. There shouldn't be any problem, sir. He was cut off by another annoying excuse. That's not for you to decide. If you were absent, you must take makeup lessons. He pushed up his glasses again. The instructor in charge decides the content. And the content of your makeup lesson is, you'll be sparring with me. Will was stunned. A duel between teacher and student? The condition for winning is quite easy. Yes, naturally, I'll give you a handicap. Given the difference in our strength, if you can land just one hit on me, I'll let you pass the course. With conditions like these, you're not planning to run, are you? As expected, Will didn't answer immediately. Seeing him lost in thought, the man thought arrogantly, your attacks won't even come close to touching me. I'll give you a beating so you learn the difference in our power. Then you'll learn to be obedient. After a moment of thought, Will decided on his answer. I understand. I'll do it. A sinister look appeared on the professor's face. Then let's start right now. He immediately activated a magic circle. I remember seeing his magic once before. It's earth manipulation. The ground in front of him shook violently. Will quickly jumped back to dodge. So fast. Suddenly, he noticed something within the rock. Another boulder erupted instantly, making it extremely difficult to dodge. When he looked up again, Will gasped in shock. A massive stone pillar crashed down where he had just been standing. The professor attacked without hesitation, smirking. What's wrong? All you can do is dodge. Taking a moment to catch his breath, Will made an assessment. It's not like creation magic. He uses the existing ground, so the attack speed is incredibly fast. Plus, the trajectory is very flexible. He's definitely on a completely different level than Anpu. He leaped into the air again. But he was quite confident in his speed, and the proof was that right now, it still wasn't fast enough for him to be unable to dodge. In just a flash, The distance between the two was closed. The magic circle beneath him lit up again. In the blink of an eye, two massive boulders appeared right next to Will. Then they crushed together without a single gap. The one who committed such a ruthless act actually smiled. But things didn't go as the professor intended. He held the knife in midair, his hands swiftly swinging it backward. Who would have thought that his entire body was protected by stone? The knife couldn't budge an inch. It's really tough. This method won't do a thing. Will leaned back. Inside the boulder, the professor sneered disdainfully. So weak. With that level of skill, don't even dream of breaking my iron wall armor crystallized from the earth. In this situation, he couldn't help but spit out. That name sure sounds catchy. This time he was spouting ruthless words. I've never heard of anyone using healing magic to attack. What a half-baked copycat. The weakest magic trying to act like an attack mage is just ridiculous. Will wasn't angry. He just sighed and said, Professor, thanks to healing magic, I've studied the human body very thoroughly. I realize that normally, humans always have to hold back their own strength. Because the body can't withstand its own full power. If you try to burst past the limit, the body will tear itself apart. The professor scoffed in confusion. What's this? Trying to lecture me? Since your attack magic is useless, you're trying to use your mouth to escape? He held out his hand and smiled. Hold on. His sleeve rolled up, revealing a bit of muscle. So even if you break your limits to unleash more power, this body won't be able to stay intact. A surge of mana radiated from Will's palm. But I'm a healer, so it doesn't matter if my arm breaks. He seemed to have realized something. As he spoke, he stepped closer. Of course, I don't like pain at all, but it'll heal right away. Even though he was quite panicked, the professor still thought, foolish. How could that trick break my iron wall armor crystallized from the earth? Will just calmly said one sentence. Let's find out. A crazed smile appeared on the calm teenager's face. Bring it. He could only gape, unable to dodge in time. A heavy punch landed on the professor's sturdy face. Take this. The boulder was shattered, revealing his bloodied face. He calmly smiled and offered a reminder. It's not good to confidently decide a student's limits, you know. Will had learned a new lesson. Ever since Professor Vizonica suggested I use healing magic to attack, I suddenly realized something. There's nothing more foolish than assuming something is impossible. I will definitely become much stronger than this. Suddenly, he felt something approaching. The moment he dodged to the side, a stone pillar shot up and thrust straight forward. It seems that punch just now didn't knock him out. The professor is really furious now. Seeing him struggling to stand up, trembling all over, Will found it a bit funny and reminded him, Professor, you said I'd pass if I just landed one hit. But the professor unwillingly retorted, shut up. There are no witnesses here. A magic circle appeared on the ground again. I refuse to admit I was hit by a healer. Sharp rocks jutted out from the ground. I will never accept that. Facing this situation, he just sighed wearily. Releasing limits isn't just for punching, you know. A surge of mana erupted from the soles of his feet. Instantly, Will moved right in front of his opponent. He was stunned, his jaw dropping in shock. So fast. He could only watch as the other party raised his fist again. The iron wall armor won't make it in time. The professor couldn't dodge, so he squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for the impact. But after waiting, he felt nothing. He slowly opened his eyes, only to see the fist stopped right in front of his face. What? It stopped? Then he realized this bizarre situation. I can't move either. Just as he thought that, the fist made contact with his face, making the professor finally realize. No, his time slowing down. He couldn't utter a single word. He could only beg in his heart. Stop. Please stop. The professor's face contorted completely. This pain, it's dragging on forever. How many times more painful is this than a normal punch? The punch isn't even finished yet. I can't take this anymore. But I can't run away. And I can't even scream to my heart's content. In this moment, his pleas seemed to echo loudly. Please, end this. As if hearing the professor's inner voice, time instantly returned to normal. His entire body crashed heavily onto the ground. Meanwhile, the culprit behind this was smiling gently. Welcome back, Professor. For me, it was just a split second. Hearing that, the professor sat up and screamed. What the hell? What did you do? Will waved his hands and explained. Unlike you, Professor, I'll explain it thoroughly. Here's what happened. The exact moment my fist made contact, I cast a sensory enhancement spell on you. Originally, this is a spell to treat people with impaired hearing or vision. Lately, I've been using it to increase my own reaction speed. But I cast it on you at a level that exceeded the limit. As a result, your senses became abnormally sharp, making 1 second feel like 1,000 seconds. 1 second equals 1,000 seconds. How painful it is to be punched in that state. You're probably the one who understands it best now, right? Even though he was smiling, his entire body exuded a terrifying aura. Also, I have a question. Did I pass the test? He clicked his tongue in annoyance. Fine. But Will wasn't finished yet. One more thing. The hand resting on the man's shoulder tightened. It might be hard to erase the discrimination ingrained in your blood, but if you ever dare to stand in my way again. His entire body radiated a thick, murderous intent. Then I'll have to show you what true pain tastes like. Until this body carves it into its very bones, making the professor tremble in terror. I just want to attend school in peace. And of course, I don't want to be bothered by the other students either. Finally, acting as if nothing happened, Will spoke extremely politely. You'll grant my request, right, Professor? Just like that, time passed. The light of the setting sun shone on the school. Walking down the hallway, he couldn't help but think about it. What the hell is wrong with that guy? I thought all healers lacked combat ability and were just a bunch of weaklings with no will to resist. Everyone said those people had to submit to us attack mages. But he's completely different. Not only does he possess formidable combat skills, but his willpower is so strong it radiates murderous intent. Talk about a narrow path. Unbut showed up at quite the right time. He looked extremely amused as he asked, Professor, is he done with his test? Then he chuckled, thinking, now he's even closer to the expulsion door. But suddenly, the professor shouted a command. Shut your mouth. He got right in the guy's face and issued a warning. Don't mess with him anymore. I'm telling you this for your own good. If you treat him like a normal healer, you're dead wrong. Unbut, as expected, didn't believe it, frowning and arguing back. That's not what I want to hear. Did you forget, Professor? If I tell my father. That familiar line didn't scare the professor anymore. Then go ahead and do it. Amidst his confusion, the professor continued, speaking of which, if you can actually pull that off, then instead of targeting me, why don't you just kick him out yourself? Before leaving, he left behind a cryptic remark. If your family acts on your words, it's highly likely he'll come back and bite us hard later. The empty hallway now only had Unbut. A fist slammed hard into the wall next to him. Curses spewed from his lips. Damn it. A few days later, after school, the book was closed. Will stretched comfortably. So peaceful. He could guess why the situation had turned out like this. It seems the professor gave Unbut a stern warning. He still glares at me bitterly sometimes, but he doesn't dare do anything anymore. Ezuka approached to ask about homework while Will was lost in thought. Thanks to that, I can focus on my studies. But this still isn't enough. That bloody scene flashed in his mind again. To change that doomed future of humanity, I need to get even stronger. But outwardly, he calmly explained the lesson to her. The idea of using healing magic for enhancement is good. But what I'm doing is simply punching and kicking with all my might. After the explanation, Ezuka left satisfied, leaving Will alone with his thoughts. Sensory enhancement is only good for scaring people. Compared to the versatility of attack magic, I'm still far behind. I need to come up with new ways to fight. He carefully asked the person in front of him. That's what I'm thinking. What do you think? Once again, Vazanika appeared and met with him. Professor Vazanika. Vazanika closed her eyes and spoke in a cold voice. Before that, I want to say one thing. Will, feeling extremely down, reluctantly replied. She crossed her arms and smiled in praise. Good job, Will. He thought he was going to be scolded, but was amazed when he heard her say that. You're the talk of the town among the teaching staff. A healer keeping up with Quartz classes is quite an impressive achievement. Vazanika then shifted her gaze toward the teachers. Most of the teachers seem unhappy about this. Will gave a helpless smile. Well, yeah? He asked with deep suspicion, are you hiding the fact that you gave me advice, Professor Vazanika? Vazanika replied immediately, not exactly hiding it. I just don't talk to the other teachers much. There simply hasn't been an opportunity to bring it up. Will silently recalled the sight of her sitting alone in a corner, saying nothing. Is Professor Vazanika isolated, even among the teaching staff? He awkwardly scratched his head to smooth things over. But I'm glad it turned out this way. Because it's all thanks to your advice, Professor. I'd feel terrible if your position was affected because of this. Vazanika abruptly turned around, wanting to leave. I don't care, so don't worry. Besides, the one who should be grateful is me. Will asked in confusion, You're grateful to me, Professor? She turned her head to answer his question. Like I said, with the mindset of a healer, they would never think of putting that theory into practice. Vazanika slowly drew the sword strap to her back. Vazanika swung her sword with a serious expression. I was already curious to see what a healer fighting in real life would look like. Will started to feel flustered and panicked, asking, Professor, what are you doing? She raised her sword into an attacking stance. I want to test where your current skill level is at. Didn't you want to know how to get stronger? Hearing that, he hurriedly waved his hands in refusal. Wait, fighting against Professor Vazanika? Vazanika cut him off. There's no room for pausing on the battlefield. She forcefully leaped forward. Will's face was a mix of panic and terror, fumbling and not knowing what to do. He raised his short blade to block Vazanika's attack. Will gritted his teeth, using his small sword to desperately block. Vazanika swung down with all her might, but he quickly dodged, escaping the blade. Will gritted his teeth, taking the hits while thinking to himself. Even with reaction speed enhancement magic, I'm still barely keeping up. He looked at her continuously swinging her sword at him. At this rate, Professor Vazanika isn't just fast. Every single one of her movements is perfectly streamlined to unleash continuous strikes. Will stepped back, panting heavily and exhausted. Relying solely on physical enhancement to keep up will eventually hit a limit. He gathered his strength and charged at Vazanika. Just one chance. With a speed I've never revealed before. Will's back foot stomped hard on the ground, generating a massive burst of power that caved in the earth. I have to catch her off guard. Will used his burst of speed to charge forward when she left an opening. In a flash, the sharp tip of the sword thrust right in front of her face. Vazanika tightened her grip on the sword, a surge of power radiating from the blade. Vazanika leaned in and delivered a powerful downward slash, leaving Will stunned. His eyes shrank, filled with fear, admiration, and astonishment. The tip of the small sword was cleanly sliced off, falling to the ground with a clatter. Will stood there dumbfounded, only able to let out a few awkward laughs. Vazanika quickly sheathed her sword at her hip. She rested her chin on her hand, deeply impressed. I didn't expect you to make me use my magic sword. Will looked at her helpless face, and her expression is still so deadpan. Vazanika put her hands on her hips and spoke with deep admiration. I thought your skills would only be at the level of a healer who can fight like an attack mage. But in reality, your abilities are top tier among attack mages of your age. Will stammered in reply, Thank you so much, Professor. But this still isn't enough. Vazanika crossed her arms, her eyes full of expectation. I like people with ambition like you. Just enhancing your body isn't enough to satisfy you, right? Will held up his broken sword, looked at it, and said, Yes. No matter how much I break my physical limits, what I can do is still restricted. Vazanika crossed her arms and countered, A sword isn't just for slashing. You can also stab or throw it. There must be other ways to utilize healing magic besides physical enhancement. He scratched his head awkwardly and replied, I've thought of all sorts of ways, but I haven't found one that really works yet. She pointed a finger at her temple. Perhaps you lack real combat experience. All ideas need practical experience to take shape. Knowledge is very important, but the ideas born from reality are what you're looking for. Didn't you realize anything from that match just now? Her words made Will recall. That's true. He spoke respectfully. Please instruct me. So I should continue sparring with you, Professor Vazanika? Vazanika immediately replied, Not a bad idea. But there's a monster subjugation field training coming up soon. Will was completely stunned hearing that and repeated, Field training? He thought to himself, This happened in my past life too. The joint monster subjugation training of the 3 academies. The Attack Magic Academy, Cord Academy. The Healing Magic Academy, Healeth Academy. And the Swordsmanship Academy, Sinburn. Students from each school will form parties and carry out actual monster subjugation requests. Back when I was at Healeth, I didn't participate. But Will remembered the images of those monsters. In this life, I will hunt down monsters and change that doomed future. He clenched his fists, extremely resolute. I definitely will. Vazonica stared at his demeanor for a moment without saying anything. Her eyes darkened as she spoke. If you want to participate, you have to prove your abilities through the Academy's selection exam. I heard there's a kid in this year's freshman class who's hailed as a genius. Your goal is to take the top spot among your peers. Will was extremely curious and asked, how does that field training selection exam work? Vazonica didn't hesitate and answered immediately. The candidates will fight each other directly. She began to describe it so he would understand. Every year, there are about 100 applicants, and only a few who show true strength get chosen. Hearing that, Will evaluated in his mind. This school really only values combat, huh? Will brought a hand to his chin, falling into deep thought. I remember at Healyth, so few people applied that anyone who wanted to join could. This proactive approach is definitely court style. He recalled memories of his past life. Healyth Academy, so nostalgic. I wonder what Master is doing right now? Vazonica spoke up to remind him. By the way, rumor has it that genius has already surpassed even the teachers. Taking first place won't be a walk in the park. Will was extremely excited inwardly. Way better than that homeroom teacher of mine, huh? Will asked curiously, have you met that student yet, Professor? Vazonica let out a sigh full of regret. I heard another teacher is already in charge of that student, so he never comes to me to ask about anything. Will smiled awkwardly and helplessly, thinking to himself, I don't think that's the only reason. The other students don't dare ask you either. She placed a hand on her chest with an extremely resolute expression. Don't worry. I'll help you train too. Hearing that, Will was overjoyed. Thank you so much, Professor. Time quickly flew by to the day of the selection exam. He was walking along the hallway of the arena, thinking, in the blink of an eye, exam day is here. His face clearly showed determination and resolve. I've prepared as much as I can. Now all that's left is to fight. Suddenly, a voice called out from behind, making Will freeze. Hey, Will. He turned around in confusion and called out, Principal. He is the chairman of the Magic Academy Alliance and the principal of Court Academy, Onigam Gongyan. Onigam smiled brightly and stepped forward to greet him. Long time no see. Since that time, my granddaughter has been doing very well. He smiled back. That's great to hear. He stared at Will and said, even though you're the one who saved my granddaughter, I apologize for only being able to check on you today. I know you were mentally prepared, but it must be tough at court, right? Will placed a hand on his chest and answered confidently, I struggled a bit at first, but everything's fine now. He spoke with great excitement. I'm even aiming for the champion spot in this selection exam. Onigam stroked his beard and laughed heartily. How reliable. Suddenly, a booming voice came from the opposite side. How ridiculous. My ears are itching just hearing it. He slowly walked toward the two of them. This brat wants to compete for first place? As the training supervisor, I have to teach you brats a lesson. He was the field training supervisor. Will turned back to stare at him, sizing him up. I met him in my past life. He recalled his memories. In my past life, Bot Lightning Bolt was an offensive mage who achieved great feats during the Great War. While he was thinking, Bot approached and grabbed Will by the collar. Personally, I don't have many fond memories of him. He exuded an overwhelming, fiery aura. Combat is a world of talent. Practice and effort are just things you pile on top of that. Bot got right in Will's face, looking furious. As a healer, you don't stand a chance of winning. Facing the current situation, Audium stepped in to mediate. The exam is coming up soon. Let the results speak for themselves. Arguing won't solve anything. Hearing that, Bot let go of him. Arguing? This is how I teach. He turned his back with an air of absolute confidence. Besides, the opponent you'll be facing is my Chris. A young man's figure approached from a distance. That young man was Chris Lewis. Will's eyes narrowed as he stared at him. Looking at the familiar figure approaching him, he realized it was the genius, Chris Lewis. The opponent I need to defeat to take the top spot. Their eyes met, locked in a determined stare. Audium let out a deep sigh of admiration. Such passion. Good. But it's almost time. Come on, don't just stand there. Let's go. The candidates quickly lined up and entered the arena. The stands were filled with explosive excitement. The candidates lined up neatly to hear the orders. Will turned to the person next to him and asked, Ezuka, you're participating too? Ezuka sobbed helplessly. If I don't participate, my allowance will be cut off. The boys behind them looked up at him with daggers in their eyes. Will gave a helpless, forced smile. I really don't want to be here. Audium stood in the middle of the student body to give a speech. I am proud to see such a large number of candidates applying this year. Let your passion and will to fight burn to the fullest. He held up a finger and began to explain. The preliminary round is about to begin. After a set period, those who are still standing will advance to the official round. Will thought to himself, feeling incredibly tense. A survival match with hundreds of people here? Isn't it too crowded? As if reading his mind, Audium slammed his staff onto the ground. You must be worried that this place is a bit small. But don't worry. A surge of magic shot out, creating a void beneath everyone's feet. Everyone looked down, completely stunned. What is this? Is that a starry sky beneath the ground? He raised his staff high into the sky, and it reflected the sunlight. A massive magic circle appeared in the sky. Let's begin. Will was teleported to a forest. He began to look around, observing his surroundings. Is this the forest behind the academy? Suddenly, Audium's voice rang out. Can everyone hear me clearly? I've just randomly teleported all of you. You can avoid strong opponents or cooperate with people you know. Ezuka was screaming in panic. Where am I? Chris listened with a surprised expression as the voice continued. However, your starting position is entirely based on luck. Will looked up at the sky and marveled. Teleporting that many people in an instant? Unbelievable. Birds took flight at the sound of his announcement. And so, I declare the start of the field training selection exam. He quickly leaped forward. First, he jumped onto a high tree branch to observe. Will began to cast a skill on himself. Presence concealment. I'll minimize all life signs and hide my existence. Suddenly, a noise from behind caught his attention. A group of two was fighting a girl. On this side, a young man gave an order. Go, my golem. Seeing it rush forward, Ezuka swung the hammer in her hand. I'll crush you with this magic hammer. The girl on this side also blew a blast of cold air. Blizzard. Will stood behind them, smiling as he watched. This is a good chance to observe all kinds of offensive magic. It would be a waste if I only aimed to pass the exam. He curled his lips into a deep smile. Not bad. I want to use that move too. The young man and his pet had defeated the two girls on this side. The two of them threw their hands up in joy. All right, I took down both of them. See how strong my golem is. Suddenly, Will glided behind him and replied, I saw it clearly. He reached out and grabbed the young man's head. Then he cast his magic, using the technique, consciousness severance. The young man's eyes turned white and lifeless. He fell backward, his limbs remaining in their original position. Will placed his hand on the boy's head and began to feel, manipulating the flow of life force to make the opponent faint. I have to grab the opponent's head, so it's hard to use if the skill gap isn't large. But it can neutralize an enemy without causing much injury. Will broke into a cold sweat and gave a forced laugh. This is a technique I came up with during special training with Professor Vazonica. Luckily, it worked. Suddenly, he looked behind him, alert. 3 knives flew toward Will, but he quickly dodged them. He looked at the sword stuck in the ground with extreme caution. This magic is. After identifying it, Will breathed a sigh of relief. He looked toward Unbutt and 2 others who were approaching. Unbutt, you really never learn. He reached out and began to mock him. Never learn? I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. I'm just doing my best to pass this exam. All 3 of them cast their magic simultaneously. With all the power I have. Will thought to himself, so it's 3 against 1, huh? He unleashed glowing orange sword beams. Magic, blade creation. The boy with the pompadour next to him stepped forward. Magic, poison enhancement. All 3 used their abilities to launch swords at will. Magic, shadow clone. Unbutt laughed loudly, feeling incredibly smug and triumphant. These poison blades will sink right into your skin with just a light touch. And with this many, no matter how fast you are, you won't be able to dodge them all. The swords whistled through the air, aiming for Will. He looked up at the poison-tipped blades and thought, I could use recovery magic to neutralize the poison, but with this many, it'll be hard to get through without a scratch using only physical enhancement. His hands began to manifest his own magic power. If it's this, then, suddenly, a blurry figure rolled toward his feet. The swords collided with that afterimage and bounced back. Unbutt broke into a cold sweat and shouted in disbelief. What? What the hell is that? The golem was now using its body to shield Will. He reached out and began to transfer mana into it. Basically, recovery magic only works on living things. But this golem operates by using the summoner's blood as a medium. In other words, it's a magical creature. He raised his hand and began to control the attack. Although it can't perform complex actions like a living creature, I can control it just by infusing it with life force. The golem quickly rushed toward the three of them as ordered. It swung a fist into the pompadour guy's chest, making him cough up blood. Pseudo-life granting. It turned around and sat heavily on another person. No. Unbutt stood to the side, watching anxiously. You guys, don't get taken down so easily. Suddenly, an afterimage flashed in front of him, startling him. Will's hand grabbed his face. He gave a gentle smile and said, "All right, good night." The scene shifted. The golem was fighting two other players. Will stood on a tree, observing and thinking. Physical enhancement is only for close combat, but golems can cover that weakness. Besides, this way I can leisurely observe everyone's offensive magic. Suddenly, his eyes widened in shock. From a distance, a powerful tornado was slowly engulfing Will's body. Will was panicked and confused. What just happened? Suddenly, a blast of magic shot toward him. He used all his strength to jump off the tree. That power blast destroyed nearly half the forest. Even the two classmates from before and the golem were lying flat on the ground. Will looked at the devastated landscape around him, completely dazed. A familiar figure slowly approached from the distance. It was Chris, slowly walking forward while casting magic. Will thought, the genius Chris. Just as expected, his power is impressive. Defeating him won't be easy. He quickly put his hands in his pockets, taking a defensive stance. Should I try it? His eyes narrowed when he heard Audium's announcement. That's enough. Everyone stopped at the sound of the announcement. Good work, everyone. The preliminary round ends here. The 4 people still standing have passed the preliminaries. A teleportation circle appeared beneath everyone's feet. The finals will take place tomorrow at the arena, so rest until then. I will activate the teleportation magic. Everyone, stay where you are. While being teleported, Will turned to look at Chris. His eyes were filled with a murderous intent as he stared at Will. Seeing that, Will broke into a cold sweat and thought, it seems he's really looking forward to tomorrow too. Tomorrow is the final match. Everything quickly returned to peace as they left. The scene shifted to Will's room. He was sitting at his desk, writing something down. What should I do for the rest of my day off? A commotion broke out outside the door. That's enough, Unbutt. The 2 people following Unbutt were desperately trying to stop him. That guy is seriously strong. Besides, it seems he even healed us while we were unconscious. Unbutt turned back with a furious glare. Shut up. What do you commoner nobles know? According to the Oman family precepts, being looked down upon by a healer is absolutely unacceptable. He turned away and began to plot. If this gets out, I don't know what my father will say. The other 2 looked at each other, sweating, and said nothing. They both sighed helplessly and turned to leave. Then go do it yourself, Unbutt. We're out. No one wants to get beaten up again. He called out in a panic, wait. They both ignored him and left. Unbutt's face was contorted with rage. Whatever. I have to get rid of him. At that moment, Will was leisurely eating cake and reading a book, completely unbothered. Suddenly, a knock on the door interrupted him. He closed the book and stood up. At this hour? Will walked outside and slowly opened the door, thinking, I have a bad feeling about this. Unbutt, with a cheerful face, reached out a hand in greeting. Hello, Will. Good evening. Don't you think the night is beautiful? Will asked suspiciously, what are you plotting now? He laughed back in a friendly way. Plotting? I just want to have a peaceful chat with you. Unbutt reached out and got straight to the point. Let's be honest. I absolutely hate healers. I've tried everything to kick you out of this academy. Will remembered the previous incidents and thought, I did manage to foil a few of them. Anyway, good night. He gave a mysterious smile. But I should have just said it directly instead of beating around the bush. Unbutt's face hardened with anger as he gave an order. Leave this academy. Will shook his head and refused. I have to hand it to you for coming this far. Why do you have to be so aggressive toward me? He answered arrogantly, why? I don't need a reason to despise healers. Unbutt pointed at himself with immense pride. Even within the family, anyone born a healer is cast off to some remote branch. My brother was the same, a weak, useless loser. He began to recall his brother. No matter how much he was mocked, he'd just laugh it off. A proud offensive mage and a pathetic healer are on two completely different levels. Will's expression darkened as he replied, "Is that the kind of education they drill into the minds of nobles?" Unbutt spread his arms wide, his voice dripping with authority. "If you get it now, then get lost. This is no place for a healer." Will's face hardened. "You think I'm just going to say I quit?" He replied with absolute certainty. "I'm going to make you say those words yourself." Unbutt's eyes gleamed with greed. "You have family you care about, don't you?" His face contorted as he glared at the boy. "What?" Unbutt began to recount smugly. "I had my servants investigate you, Will. You grew up with an older sister in some backwater village. You two must be very close." Will's face dropped visibly. "If I give the order to my subordinates, what do you think will happen to her?" "I'll leave that to your imagination." He leaned into Will's ear and whispered, "So have you decided yet?" Will calmly replied, "Yes, I've made my decision." Just as he was about to act superior, his neck was suddenly seized. "If you understand, then get lost. Pack your things." Will violently shoved him backward. He sat down and twisted the boy's arm back. Unbutt trembled, whimpering in a plea. "Stop it. It's going to break." Will remained indifferent, applying even more pressure. "I told you, didn't I? I've made my decision." Unbutt screamed in desperate agony. "Stop." After a blood-curdling scream, Unbutt lay on the ground, groaning in pain. He continued to mutter, "You think you'll get away with this? Once I show them this broken arm, the academy won't let this slide. Neither will my father." Will took hold of his arm and cast healing magic. "Don't worry. I've already fixed it." Seeing this, Unbutt was struck with terror. "What are you doing?" His eyes rolled back as he screamed in pure agony. Unbutt's arm was broken once again. Then, it was immediately healed by Will's magic. "I'll just keep healing it." He lifted the boy's arm casually, and then he broke it again. The boy begged through the pain. "Please, no more." Will gave a forced smile in response. "Come now, my resolve isn't that shallow. If you target me, I can let it slide. But if you dare touch my sister, I can't just sit still." The screams continued to echo. "You need to swear it properly, from the very bottom of your heart. I have to break your will." Unbutt lay on the ground, having fallen into an abyss of despair. What the hell is this guy? He looked at Will, who was smiling down at him. "This is bad. He's a demon in a healer's skin. I can never, ever mess with him again. I'd rather die than face this." After the intense ordeal, Will spoke up. "Well, good night, Unbutt." He waved goodbye to the soulless Unbutt. "Don't forget your promise not to touch me again." Will stretched, feeling completely refreshed. Honestly, that felt pretty good. All right, time for bed to get ready for tomorrow. Scene change. The next day, Will stood in the arena. The main tournament was about to begin. Eligium watched from above, leaning on his hand. Bot sat next to Cryot, also observing the scene. Will thought to himself, the top four from the preliminaries will face off in a 1v1 knockout. But he spoke up, surprised. "I didn't expect you to make it through." Ezuka stood shyly before him. She could only recall the events helplessly. "Well, I just created firewalls and used defensive tactics. It was mostly luck. I didn't actually defeat anyone." Will was speechless. An offensive mage who plays defense from start to finish? That's a rare breed. He stared at Ezuka, feeling worried. "But can you survive if you keep playing like that?" She spoke timidly. "We're friends, after all. Maybe you could go easy on me." Will replied flatly. "No way. I knew it." She took a combat stance. "Anyway, I've passed the minimum score. Now, I'll just do my best." The referee signaled. "Well then, let the match begin." Ezuka broke into a sweat as she cast her spell. "Here I come." She fired a fireball at Will. "Fire." He quickly formed a shield with his hands to block the impact. His expression didn't change as he thought. Standard fire magic. At this level, my recovery spells can handle it. Will looked at her. "Sorry, Ezuka, but I can handle this easily." Suddenly, Will's face turned to shock. "Something's wrong. This is..." Ezuka fired another fireball. "I'm not done yet." Will quickly dodged to the side to avoid the flames. He looked in shock at the flames surrounding him. "The flames that hit me won't go out. This is Ezuka's special magic, unusually persistent fire. Even if the power is average, if I'm careless and keep getting hit thinking I can just heal, I'll be in big trouble." He remembered a previous plan. Last time I borrowed her fire, it burned for a long time too. It wasn't just the Salamander Tail's property, it was her ability. Using this for a firewall would be hard to break through. But Will felt a bit helpless as he evaluated her. It really reflects Ezuka's stubborn personality. Students in the stands cheered for her. That girl is pretty good. Take down that healer. She grew more confident. Oh my, could I actually beat Will? That's right. I passed the preliminaries too. Ezuka shouted bravely. If you want to surrender, now's the time. But the opponent just replied calmly. It's fine. Extinguish. Counterattacking now. She instinctively said, of course. Then she realized something was wrong. A fireball even more powerful than before was launched. This time, it would definitely work. A smirk played on his lips. If this fire won't go out. He raised his palm and touched the flames. To carry out the plan, I'll use it to attack. Witnessing that scene, Ezuka thought in shock. Using my own flames? A fire punch. The moment she let her guard down, Will appeared right in front of her. Her face turned pale. Get back. Ezuka cowered and blurted out. I surrender. It made him freeze in his tracks. Paralyzed by fear, she collapsed to the ground. The MC's voice boomed from the speakers. The winner is Will. From the stands came a low, mocking murmur. Despite the win, Will didn't feel angry. It was strange. Even with a victory, a healer still wasn't respected. But then they turned their insults toward Ezuka. Don't just give up like that. And you call yourself an attack mage? It made her clutch her head, trembling in fear. Just a moment ago, they were cheering for her. I'm sorry. He took her hand to comfort her. Don't worry about that. I think you fought well, Ezuka. While healing her, he added, I'm sure you'll still have a chance to pass. Staring at their joined hands, she murmured his name. The romantic moment was shattered by someone's arrival. No way. That's impossible. Ezuka fearfully grabbed Will's sleeve. The man scoffed and raised a finger. Just think about it. He spat out words that were anything but kind. Healers are just useless trash. Surrendering to trash like that makes you even worse than garbage. With that, he released a terrifying aura and made his decision. You clearly failed. Now get lost and stop wasting my time. She trembled, barely able to answer. I'm leaving now. As Ezuka left, Will turned to rebuke the man. Isn't it a bit much to talk to a student like that? He used his position as an excuse. I'm a supervisor looking for field experience. If the level of the participants is too low, I have to be blunt. It's called tough love. He turned to leave as he spoke. However, his words carried a hidden meaning. It looks like only one person will pass this year. A tiny voice whispered, You're in the way. Turning around, he saw a familiar face. Creo, when did he get there? Also, speak up a bit. As he brushed past, Will asked cautiously, Do you agree with Professor Bot? Creo's answer was blunt. In the end, power is everything. Professor Bot is right because he's strong. Everyone has their own opinion, and Will couldn't argue with that. I see. His voice was quiet but firm. But I don't think you're weak either. So, Creo turned back, placing his trust in him. I hope you'll give it your all. He frowned, looking seriously at the person before him. That familiar name really brought back memories. Creo Lu. Come to think of it, in my past life, I heard about a terrifyingly strong attack mage who fought alongside me on the northern front. The winds he created swept away everything in their path. He took down countless opponents. That power was truly overwhelming. Finally, it was time for the finals. Will versus Creo. Before the match, Will spoke first. Looking at Professor Bot's attitude, it seems I'll never be recognized unless I win. That familiar, confident smile returned to his face. So, I'm definitely going to win. Opposite him, Creo replied calmly, Is that so? Once the two contestants finished their exchange, the referee shouted, The final match of the selection exam. Begin. A gust of wind rose from beneath their feet. A massive gale was launched from a hand much smaller than the force it produced. Will nimbly dodged to the side. He planted his feet firmly. Sparks of electricity surged out as he used the momentum to lunge toward his opponent. Creo's face grew clearer as he approached. Suddenly, a violent wind kicked up, forcing him back. The force was so strong Will had to shield his eyes. After a brief exchange, he stopped rushing in blindly. I get it. I really can't get close. Who will win this match? Will it be Creo? The result will be decided soon. Dust filled the arena. Creo spoke, sounding tired. You're fast. How annoying. Mana gathered in his palm. Then, how about this? A powerful blast of wind appeared, different from the previous pillar. We'll notice the change immediately. It's not a tornado. This is a gust meant to blow away an entire area. He was also casting magic on himself. At this rate, I'll be blown right off the stage. He crouched down and pressed his palms to the ground. I have to use this. A strange phenomenon occurred. A small plant began to sprout, eventually growing into a massive, towering tree. Sitting in the stands, Ezuka thought in amazement, is that healing magic too? Her admiration for Will grew. Will, he's gotten even stronger. He was extremely confident in this technique. Professor Vizonica, what do you think? A leaf drifted down from the tree. Below, Vizonica looked on in daze. Will stepped forward to explain why a tree had grown from the ground. I channeled life energy into the plants to make them grow at an accelerated rate. I read about attack magic that manipulates plants in the library and thought I could do it too. With this move, my tactics can vary depending on the species of tree. Suddenly, his vision blurred. Caught off guard, Will's swaying body was caught by her. Vizonica calmly steadied him and asked, "Are you okay?" He scratched his head and replied carefully, "I'm fine. But, am I almost out of mana?" He scratched his face, unbothered. The books didn't say this move was so exhausting. She replied solemnly, "As I thought." He asked curiously, "What do you mean?" She explained the situation. Destroying is always easier than healing. Recovery magic consumes far more mana than attack magic. When you use recovery magic for offense, the efficiency is bound to be extremely low. It was more knowledge to absorb. I see. I have to be careful about when I use it. Finally, back to the present, Will thought confidently. And this is that moment. I never had a knack for attack magic anyway. I'll overcome all these disadvantages. Facing the massive tree in front of him, Creo calmly raised his hand. The tree was instantly split in two by a sharp wind. This was a move Will didn't expect. Windblade. He has that too. Will's mind raced through the moves Creo had used. A cyclone that brutally swallows enemies. A storm that levels an entire area. Windblades that slice through hardwood. Anyone who got close was blown away by the vortex surrounding him. After listing them all, he reached a conclusion. His magic is too strong. No openings. Truly the level of a top candidate. However, Will wouldn't give up easily. I've determined to become strong using this very magic. With that thought, he lunged forward. Once again, protected by his wind, Creo said nonchalantly, "No matter how many times you try, you'll never touch me." Will was sent flying back. But a smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. Noticing this, Creo couldn't help but feel confused. Suddenly, a sharp wooden spike erupted from the ground, piercing through Creo's defense. After striking, it immediately retreated back into the earth, leaving him stunned. "What is this?" Will kindly provided the answer. "Your vortex doesn't protect you from underground, does it? These plants root deep and can sprout anywhere. Actually, they're called rhizomes, not roots." Glancing at a familiar figure behind the stands, Creo clicked his tongue in annoyance. After a moment, Will asked curiously, "Do you care that much about Professor Bot? You two don't seem to get along at all." Bot was scowling at the match below. The answer was simple. "He is strong, and he teaches me." But Will didn't buy it for a second. "Just for that? You don't need to learn from him. You come from a prestigious family, don't you?" Creo fell silent before starting his story. "In my family, magical ability is everything. Age or gender doesn't matter. The strongest becomes the head. Because of that, everyone is an enemy competing for the inheritance. Even my father refused to teach me magic." Hearing that, Will muttered uncomfortably, "What kind of family is that?" Creo concluded, "So for me, following the professor is the best way to get stronger." With the talk over, the battle resumed. "Are you done? That shoulder you hit still hurts like hell." Everyone watched in awe at the massive power on display. Will gave a strained smile at the scene before him. A dragon made of wind appeared. "Let's end this." The dragon roared toward its opponent. Now Creo was truly getting serious. "Lately, deep down, I thought the attack mages were just playing around. That I was the one putting in more effort, fighting without any natural talent. But that's just it. Having talent doesn't mean you're more extraordinary or superior to others. Lineage, talent, or the past, it's all equal. That's why." He suddenly smiled and said, "Creo, I really want to beat you now." It was a declaration to himself. Facing each other like sworn rivals, Creo asked, "What are you talking about?" A magic circle appeared on the ground. "Come forth, my finest seed." Massive branches erupted instantly. Lush leaves unfurled. In the center of the massive trunk, a magic circle appeared. The tree's name was Jack. It was a species that normally took a long time to grow huge. Forcing it to grow this fast consumed far more mana than other plants. The dragon and the tree collided violently. But the more mana I pour in, the higher it reaches. The wind pressure was so intense it pushed Will back. The dragon finally tore through the tree. Creo let out a sigh of relief as branches were blown into the sky. But it wasn't just a branch, it was the massive trunk itself. He didn't realize his vision had been deceived. Creo gasped in shock. "What?" Once again, Will explained. "This tree has incredible vitality. Even a single branch can grow massive. Since you were focusing on the wind dragon, you couldn't defend in time." Finally, the trunk crashed down onto the ground. Creo struggled to crawl out from under the massive tree pinning him down. Before him stood Will, firmly pointing his sword at Creo. Despite the humiliation, he had to admit it. "I lose." Drowning out Will's heavy breathing was the announcer's voice. The winner. The outcome left everyone in the stands stunned. They began to buzz with excitement. "Hey, that healer actually won. He beat Creo in a duel. Maybe he really is strong." Since the match was decided, Creo had remained silent with his head bowed. Will reached out a hand to help him up. He remarked, "That was close. You really are a genius." But contrary to his friendliness, Creo was filled with disappointment. "Still not good enough." Will was surprised to hear this. He commented on the match. "What do you mean not enough? That was an amazing fight." At that moment, a voice echoed, "Failure." Following that, a powerful bolt of lightning struck the arena. Smoke rose from the aftermath of the strike. Chris took the full hit. He just fainted right there. Bot walked over and easily used his foot to break the tree trunk pinning Chris down. He used one hand to pick him up skillfully. Bot walked away with Chris. He was furious and disappointed in him. "You failed. Chris, I will retrain you." His words made the people in the stands gasp. "That's too harsh." Bot imposed his own thoughts on everyone and grew angrier by the second. "The crowd down there thinks the same as I do. There's no way I'll accept a healer taking first place." Seeing his aggressive attitude, no one in the stands dared to resist. They didn't even dare to move. Only Will, the one who dared to speak up and had the most right to speak at this moment. He was outraged by his words. "This is going too far. I'm the winner. But that doesn't mean Chris is weak. It was an even match. And if we fought again..." Bot's eyes glared at him fiercely. He didn't want to hear any opposition. "Don't talk back to me. A rematch? A promise for the future? You fools. On the battlefield, strength is everything. Losing means being treated like trash and dying. That's it." Will felt the foulness in this man's character. He felt indignant for Chris. "Even toward your own student." Will pointed confidently at himself. "Then, I already defeated Chris, didn't I? I've proven my strength." The fire of anger in Bot's heart was growing larger. His voice was terrifyingly low. "That level of strength?" Bot slowly approached Will, putting pressure on him. But Will remained calm. He began to reason with him. "It's true we can't fight, but we support everyone with healing magic. That's the division of roles. If we don't know how to work together, humanity will perish." Bot fell silent for a moment. His face didn't relax one bit. Bot made a gesture as if brushing dust off his shirt, his voice flat. "My students held the front line to let you healers escape. And yet, those healers were pathetically wiped out by low-level monsters while fleeing. My students, broken and with nowhere to go. They're all dead. You can't even stand firm on the battlefield, let alone save my students. Because of trash like that, why did Chris have to sacrifice himself?" As the last sentence ended, he had already prepared a fist aimed at Will. He stood motionless as he heard the hidden sorrow in his heart. Will also confirmed, Professor Bot has a point. Thinking of this, countless images of the battlefield flashed in his mind. "It's up to you. From now on, you are the world's greatest healer. I should have fought myself. If you're weak, you'll end up achieving nothing. With your strength, I have to fight myself." Then Will reminded himself, but an era where monsters become even more ferocious is about to arrive. When that happens, those who hold power aren't allowed to be selfish anymore. He clenched his hand into a fist and spoke slowly. "Then, Those with nothing in their hands like me need to become even stronger. If I defeat you, will you acknowledge me? Bot lowered his hand. He curled his lip, treating the words as a joke. Bot turned to instruct the referee of the previous match. Hey you, as soon as I declare the match started, take that kid and get out of here. The man was shocked and wanted to confirm again. Professor Bot, don't tell me you're actually going to fight? Bot answered firmly. Since it's a selection, I decide the rules. The referee gave Will a worried look as he carried Chris away. But in Will's eyes now was absolute determination, without a hint of fear. Looking at the scene, the referee could only shake his head and sigh. As he took Chris off the stage, an even more grueling battle officially began. Special match, Bot vs. Will. Begin. Bot rubbed his hands together to warm up, and a powerful energy was created. He was full of confidence and contempt for his opponent. I'll prove to you just how low your level is. Bot's overwhelming aura and power made Will a bit wary. My mana is almost gone, and this opponent is the strongest one yet. I can't win in a normal fight. First, I have to use this. Seeing how he cast his move, Bot also attacked. He judged, too slow. Will looked up. The light from Bot's magic shone on his face. His attack was so powerful it seemed to tear through space. After that attack, the aftermath left clouds of dust spreading. Bot held up 3 fingers, feeling incredibly smug. Let me teach you 3 reasons why my victory is absolute. First, overwhelming distance to control the enemy. Second, speed that leaves the opponent no time to react. And finally, one-hit kill power. The opponent can't do anything anymore. It's over. Or can you not even hear me anymore? Just as he thought the enemy had failed, Will's voice slowly rang out. One-hit kill power? Where exactly is it? Contrary to what he wanted, Will was still standing firmly on the ground. His body was a bit scratched up, but not significantly. He had successfully calculated everything. I know Bot possesses special violet thunder. To minimize damage from the electricity, I have to avoid being hit directly in the body, no matter how good I am. If the brain or heart is hit, recovery magic won't save me in time. So, I created a conductive blood vessel, leading the electricity from my arm to my leg and then straight into the ground, dispersing the current to minimize damage. Doing this was just enough to hold on. Will began to manifest his power once again. He grew more confident. Now it's my turn to counterattack. Bot scratched his head, still carrying contempt for him. It seems you had to struggle just to survive that hit. But Will didn't pay much attention to his words. He continued to gather his inner strength. Physical enhancement. Something went wrong. He couldn't perform the move. Will's body, as if devoid of strength, slumped forward. He looked at his 2 hands. His body was now trembling violently. What? I can't put any strength into my body. Bot had already guessed it. He explained the mechanism of the move. The absolute rule is that anyone hit by my violet thunder will be paralyzed and unable to move. Will still didn't give up. He held up the hand pierced by the knife to attack, along with a remark, "This is bad." Bot's smug smile was displayed once again. He still maintained his air of looking down on others. Come to think of it, you were fine before. Bot attacked him directly once again. This time seemed even more powerful than the last. In the stands, Ezuka was so worried for him she was about to cry. Will was still trying to resist the continuous magical attacks. He cursed inwardly. Damn it, he's seriously strong. His unique magic really has no openings. Now I understand why he's so arrogant. Even so, I've decided. I will win. Once that thought was set, Will placed his hand on the ground. This is my last seed and my last magic. Plant manipulation. Grow. Water guardian tree. As soon as he finished speaking, a massive tree grew up to block his path. Will calculated very carefully for this move. This species absorbs and stores a massive amount of water from the ground. If used as a shield, the lightning will be dispersed. Ba was still infinitely confident. He believed that move wouldn't do anything to him. So what? Along with that question was the shock in Will's eyes. Everyone in the stands was also gaping in disbelief. The guardian tree that was just created by Will's magic was now snapped in half by Bot without any resistance. Looking at the destroyed tree in front of him, Will shouted in disbelief, "Impossible." Bot walked toward him with full confidence. He continued to show contempt. "Is that your final move? Ending with such a pathetic defensive move is just too much." But as he got closer to the tree, Bot discovered a mushroom growing on the trunk. Then, As if catalyzed, a forest of mushrooms began to grow without stopping. Of course, this shocked Bot. He shouted in confusion, "What the hell is this?" Will pulled the knife out of his palm and gave a cold laugh. "I didn't expect it to be this effective. Some plants and mushrooms have spores that grow rapidly after being struck by lightning. A forest burned to ashes by lightning is the perfect opportunity for growth because there's no competition, right? This spore blower mushroom is one of them. But that's not its only characteristic." Bot instinctively looked at the thousands of growing mushrooms. He still couldn't believe it. What? Not long after, a strange sensation spread through his body, making him panic. Bot looked at his arm. Now his whole body felt like electricity was running through it. "My whole body is numb. We'll seize the golden opportunity. Now is the time." He rushed forward with a fist carrying all his strength. In that situation, Bot wasn't worried at all. He was still smiling. Bot quickly counterattacked. He punched Will directly, sending him flying. Will couldn't react in time to that counterblow. He coughed up blood immediately. Looking at Will's kneeling figure made him despise him even more. Foolish. Clearly, I'm superior in close combat as well. My unique magic is lightning manipulation. If I use electricity to enhance my body and move at high speed, that bit of numbness is nothing. Will's whole body trembled. He clenched his hands to support himself. He still couldn't believe it. No way. Even after doing all this, I still can't win? Bot's eyes became sharp. He growled out each word clearly, as if passing judgment. "Then, you lose." As soon as he finished, Bot prepared to unleash the final blow to finish him. But at that moment, Vazonica appeared. She pointed her sword at Bot and demanded he stop. "That's enough. Isn't this a bit too much, Professor Bot?" Bot paused for a moment and laughed mockingly. He turned and pushed her blade away. "Vazonica, don't interfere when you're just a rookie." Will, trembling over there, also realized he had a savior. Professor Vazonica. Vazonica wanted everything to end here. She reasoned, the match is already decided. Going further will only injure him pointlessly. Hearing that, Bot immediately objected. This kid can heal his own wounds. He can still fight. Vazonica continued to try and protect Will. Only as long as he has mana. He doesn't have enough mana left. The more he heard, the angrier Bot got. He wanted to attack Vazonica too. He just lacks the will to fight. She wouldn't back down either. Vazonica began to gather her aura, ready to fight. There's nothing more to discuss. The two of them rushed at each other, signaling the start of a major battle. But luckily, at that moment, a voice rang out, stopping the intense fighting spirit of the two. "That's enough, both of you." Audium had appeared. He looked down at the two of them from above. Audium reminded them, "Having you two brawling here is the most useless thing of all." He slowly descended, as light as a feather. Audium looked at Bot and spoke calmly, "Stop it." He closed his eyes as if giving a warning. Bot felt it too. His face wasn't very comfortable. But this order couldn't be disobeyed. Bot scratched his head and complied. "Fine." Audium then turned to Vazonica. His expression changed completely compared to when he looked at Bot. "Vazonica, I apologize for not explaining clearly." He raised a hand to his mouth and coughed a few times to get everyone's attention. Audium officially announced, "The main content of the field training selection exam ends here. Everyone, disperse immediately." People didn't linger but slowly moved out of the arena. Will was still having trouble healing himself. He grimaced in pain. "Damn it. I'm completely out of mana. The healing isn't progressing at all. I don't want to lose. Is the gap really this large?" Vazonica didn't say anything and just picked him up. Will was extremely flustered, struggling even to say her name. "Professor." "Vazonica." She calmly comforted and encouraged him. "I think you did very well. Don't push yourself anymore. Rest." Will lowered his head in embarrassment. He whispered, "I understand." But in his heart, he was still unsatisfied. Did well? That's not enough. And the night gradually passed. While walking on the road, Will continued to silently evaluate. That is the power of a top-tier offensive mage. Not just pure strength, but the level of sophistication and tactics is on a completely different level. But even with them, humanity still perished. "I need to be even stronger." He went to a room. Will opened the door and looked inside, speaking politely, "Excuse me." Audium was inside. He was very welcoming when he arrived. "Will, I'm glad you came." He stroked his beard while asking about him with concern. "Your wounds seem to be fine now, just as I expected. Or should I say, Without waiting for him to ask more, we'll explain directly. Once my mana recovers, these minor injuries will heal instantly. Audium laughed heartily and affirmed. Then participating in the field training won't be a problem. Hearing this surprised Will. He asked again to be sure, I get to participate? Audium took it as a given. You were the winner of the main event, after all. Of course. Besides you, Chris and Ezuka also passed. You too? Will still couldn't believe it. But sir, Professor Bot said everyone failed. Besides, I didn't even win. Audium understood well and explained. It's like this every year. This surprised Will once again. Every year? Audium revealed Bot's purpose. He said everyone failed this year to create pressure, to awaken the students' true potential. But in the end, he still lets a few people pass. Anyway, field training has many potential dangers. That's his way of showing he's a true teacher. After hearing that, Will evaluated, he's certainly a clumsy person. But I think it makes sense. In my past life, Bot always fought on the front lines for humanity. Without a doubt, he was one of the heroes who worked hard to save the world. Although I can't stand his words or actions, he has his own pride. Without making Will wait long, Audium quickly gave him the mission. Well then, Will, you will form a team with students from other academies in the role of an offensive mage. And you will carry out actual monster subjugation requests. Will was still dazed. He silently repeated those words. Monster subjugation. This is the first time I've faced monsters since my regression. 5 years later in my past life. The direct cause of humanity's extinction was these monsters. First, I must mention their origin. Monsters originally referred to any creature possessing magic power. Not all monsters were hostile to humanity. They occasionally attacked humans, but that was their survival behavior, within the scope of natural competition. If we understood their ecology, they would be neighbors we could utilize. However, in about 2 years, the world will change. The blood of monsters exposed to this red moonlight becomes extremely violent. And from then on, the tragedy began. Monsters gathered together and started exterminating humans just for the sake of slaughter. 2 years after that, the Demon King descended. Humanity quickly fell into a disadvantage. Many died, and nations collapsed. Offensive mages were highly valued on the battlefield, but for that reason, they died one after another. The same happened to excellent knights. Healers didn't go to the front lines. When the battle lines collapsed, they were simply wiped out by monsters. By the time I died, there was almost no one left who could fight. In less than a few months, humanity would be extinct. Will clenched his hand. He promised himself, I can't let that tragedy repeat. I need to become stronger than anyone in my past life and gain the power to resist the massive monster invasion. And if possible, find the cause, the origin in the blood that makes monsters violent. Audium saw him deep in thought. He stroked his beard and commented, That's quite a resolve. Your eyes look just like they did the first day we met. He gently encouraged him, You'll be fine like this. Will felt a bit worried. Fine. How do the teachers view the field training? Audium walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. He seemed interested, but also, I particularly wanted to talk to you, Will. He looked at him with a confused expression, like a bewildered deer. After talking with Audium, Will went to the gathering place for those chosen for the field training. At this time, he and Ezuka were present. They were just waiting for the last person, Chris. After waiting for a while, there was movement. Chris had arrived, and walking ahead of him was the tall, burly Bot. Will stepped in front of him and spoke first. I heard that the reason you're strict is because you care about your students. Bot brought his face close to Will's and let out a fierce shout. He stood up straight with his hands on his hips, his voice full of aggression. I don't know what you're talking about, but you're just weak trash who couldn't even land a hit on me. So don't get ahead of yourself. Will was taken aback by his attitude. He whispered yes. In his heart, he complained, his attitude hasn't changed at all. Bot walked past him and let out a huff. If you understand, then focus on the field training, you idiot. But, I'll thank you for taking care of Chris. At this time, Chris, who was behind him, also slowly spoke up. Me too. Will was startled when he suddenly appeared behind him. Chris. Will silently evaluated, still as quiet as ever. Chris clenched his hand into a fist and punched the air to show his determination. Thank you. Thanks to you, I can give my all in training and become even stronger. That's Professor Bot's lesson. As long as you survive and can take revenge, there's no loss. We'll maintain the same energy as him. He raised his hand for a fist bump. Good. You have to keep getting stronger. Chris curled his lips into a happy smile. He reached out to bump fists with Will as a promise. Then he quickly moved to where Bot was. Will watched him go, feeling lucky. Having more excellent offensive mages is a good thing. That way, the war against monsters will surely go more smoothly. Vazonica reminded him from afar. Will, we should get going too. Will happily replied, looking forward to the trip. Coming. On the way to the field training site, inside the carriage, Vazonica announced, we're almost at the ancient forest. Let me confirm the details of the training. This time, you'll have to complete a mission to hunt goblins in the ancient forest. 3 students from Quat, Hurlik, and Simburn will form a 4-person team with a teacher from one of the supporting schools. Ezuka had a question. The team members have already been decided? Vazonica confirmed, that's right. Ezuka is also on my team. Ezuka silently thought, that's better than strangers. But Professor Vazonica is a bit scary. Then Vazonica briefly mentioned Will's teammates. Will's team isn't ordinary at all. We're here. Vazonica led the way. She stepped down first and announced, let's go. It seems the participant from Simburn is already here. Will also stepped down from the carriage. He remembered his past life and confirmed, Simburn, huh? I knew about them from my past life, but we don't really know each other now. Suddenly, a girl's sweet voice rang out. Master Will. Magi rushed over and hugged Will tightly. I've been waiting for the day I could meet you. Her action shocked everyone standing there. Will was squeezed until he was breathless. He politely kept his hands in the air. He spoke up. Wait, sorry, but I don't know who you are. Magi then realized she had gone a bit too far. She let go of him. Oh. Anyway, we didn't get to talk properly back then. She then officially introduced herself. I am Magi Gonzan, the granddaughter of the headmaster of Quad Academy, Audium Gonzan. After hearing her introduction, Will realized. It's the girl from back then. His memory of Magi now flashed clearly through his mind. Will was a bit surprised. He silently marveled. I didn't expect to reunite with the girl I once treated at the headmaster's house right here. Will asked about her health. How have you been feeling since then? Magi raised both hands and flexed. She wanted to confirm, completely fine. I'm sorry I couldn't properly thank you back then. Will waved his hands hurriedly. It's fine. Your grandfather already recommended me to Quad Academy. Magi looked at him and pointed to herself, affirming, but I also wanted to find a way to repay this favor. Since I have no magical talent, I entered Simburn Academy and put all my effort into training my swordsmanship. Thanks to that, I took the top spot in the academy's selection. Will was surprised by her talent. He couldn't help but shout, the valedictorian? Magi shyly covered her smiling mouth. It turns out I have a knack for the sword. Will could only let out an ooh in shock. He looked at the small girl before him and silently evaluated, from being bedridden to rising to the top in such a short time. Isn't she a monster? She walked up to him and took his hand. I'll definitely be of help to you, Master Will. That's why we were placed in the same team. After understanding her better, Will was also happy to agree. In that case, let's work hard together. At this moment, Will realized something. So this is what the headmaster meant when he said he was counting on me. Magi noticed a carriage approaching them. She quickly pulled Will's hand and ran. The people from Hurlik Academy are here. Let's go greet them. Ezuka was also surprised by this quick integration. They seem to be having fun. Vazonica also added, we should liven up the atmosphere in our team a bit too. Magi led him to the carriage and looked around. Where are our team members? Are Master Jin and Master Top here? Hearing that name, Will had a bit of a reaction. Jen, huh? The person inside the carriage replied slowly, don't rush me. I'm coming out now. The person finally stepped down from the carriage. He introduced himself and also asked the first question. I am General. Are you the students who will be in my team? This man was the teacher from Hurlik Academy, Jin Kaitot. At this moment, upon seeing him, Will was incredibly excited. Master. He was the master who taught me healing magic in my past life. The best healer I've ever known. He was so happy his body trembled slightly. To be on the same team again. Behind Jin was another person. He reminded him, Teacher, move aside a bit. I can't get down. When he stepped down, Magi quickly greeted him first. That must be Master Top. I am Magi Gonzan from Simburn. Top pushed up his glasses and replied politely, nice to meet everyone. After adjusting his glasses, Top clearly saw Will and Magi's hands tightly joined, and it was like a bolt of lightning to his ears. His excitement and joy vanished, replaced by indifference. And you? Will didn't notice. He still happily introduced himself. I am Will from Quat. Top turned his face away, his voice slightly disappointed and tinged with contempt. An offensive mage? After everyone had introduced themselves, Jin turned and walked away with a long yawn. All right, this is Jin's group. Do whatever you like. I'll just be observing. Magi was a bit surprised by his nonchalant working style. That's his way of doing things. Will had seen this many times before. Master was always like that. He quietly followed behind him. Will made a suggestion. Can I call you Master? Jin was a bit surprised by this request. Why call me that? Will quickly explain the reason. I can also use healing magic, but currently, I don't have a teacher to guide me. So I thought I'd learn from you. Jin was shocked to learn of his ability. An offensive mage who also knows how to use healing magic? I remember hearing something about that. This team arrangement was certainly intentional. Will asked him again to confirm. Is that okay, Master? Jin didn't care much about the title. He accepted. Fine. Call me whatever you want. Magi heard the conversation and joined in. If Master Will calls you that, then I'll call you Master too. Top ran after Magi like a tail, calling her back. Wait, Magi. Ezuko was once again surprised by Will and his teammates' ability to adapt. They got close so quickly. Vazonica didn't want to be outdone. We can't let ourselves fall behind either. In this subjugation campaign, each team will be responsible for a designated area. We'll use this tent as our base. The goblins' territory is a bit deeper in. So Will, Magi, and the teacher set out immediately. Just like in real combat, the healer won't go to the front lines, but will wait at the base. That's why I didn't participate in my past life. On the way, Magi had a question. Even though Master is a healer, you're still going to the front lines? Jin explained quickly, basically, I'm the supervisor for this. I'm fine. Just do whatever you want. I don't like being restricted either. Magi also followed his relaxed pace. Then I won't be formal anymore. Will hesitated slightly and pointed behind her. By the way, not being formal means. Magi seemed to realize what he meant. Of course. She quickly prepared to draw her weapon. Magi held the massive blade with both hands. She was full of confidence. With all my strength, I'll swing my sword to the fullest. After finishing off the monsters, Magi jumped around happily. She just jumped onto the top of the tower made of monster corpses she had just defeated to celebrate the victory. The huge difference made Will wonder. Is that girl? The girl who used a gentle face to call him Master Will? Magi leaped and swung her giant great sword with determined eyes. Will looked up and couldn't help but be amazed. This is Magi's swordsmanship. Every slash carries incredible power. Perhaps she alone is enough to clear this place? Just as she regained her composure, Magi suddenly stopped, her eyes wide with surprise. Looking at the monsters gradually approaching, she couldn't help but exclaim, there are so many of them. Seeing Magi's appearance, Jin couldn't help but comment, she's certainly impressive, but she leaves too many openings. That young lady is good at area attacks, but she seems weak when surrounded. Go cover for her. Hearing that, Will quickly replied, understood. He was silent for a long time, his heart filled with joy. Finally, I'm about to fight monsters. A monster was rushing forward with sharp teeth and a roar that echoed everywhere, almost breaking the silence of this place. Will saw it, his face darkened, and he told himself, those terrifying monsters. A hand from behind suddenly touched Will's shoulder, making him feel a chill down his spine. A steady voice suddenly rang out. Why are your shoulders so tense? Relax. Will looked up with a pensive and somewhat surprised expression, not answering. A long time later, he gave a faint smile and replied in a friendly way, yes. Will thought, just like back then, this person is still. Two fingertips suddenly touched each other, creating a dazzling source of power. Will had reached out to cast the spell, physical enhancement. The tip of his shoe moved slightly. His starting position was ready to burst into speed. Will rushed forward, and with just a few light slashes, he had almost wiped out half of the monsters. Their two backs immediately touched. I'm counting on you for that side. Yes. Will quickly took the advantage, holding his powerful knife. Blood splattered everywhere. He seemed to relax and let out a comfortable breath. So this is what it's like to fight using healing magic? In just a moment, the monsters were completely defeated, lying sprawled on the ground. He told himself, Not bad at all. Good. It works on monsters too. Will picked up the knife and thought for a long time. The knife Professor Vizonica gave me is truly sharp. It's completely different from Unbutt's knife. Unbutt stood nearby and shouted, "What are you mumbling about after stealing it?" Magi jumped up in joy, her heart blooming. Such explosive power, like a spring, along with skillful swordsmanship. Master Will is truly amazing. Jin, standing in the middle, suddenly spoke up. "All right, that's enough for the first day. Let's head back." The smile on her lips faded. Magi looked down in a state of surrender. Suddenly, my body feels much lighter. Will added, "That's thanks to Master." He silently thought, if evaluating healing magic ability, there would be indicators like the severity of wounds or the types of diseases that can be cured. But Master's strength is the recovery speed. A healer who heals so naturally that people don't even realize magic is being used. Thanks to that, those who aren't healers will never understand how wonderful that is. I once asked Master about that. Suddenly, Ju waved his hand with a faint smile. "I can't keep doing these flashy things. As long as they're healed, that's all that matters." He walked away, leaving the silently falling leaves and the lonely forest behind. The world remained unaware, but the greatest healer in the world is Jin Kaidos. Even so, this is still a pretty good team. The four of them huddled around the dining table. Jin spoke up directly, breaking the silence. "We scored some points today." Tua also chimed in suddenly. "Everyone returned without a single scratch, so I didn't even have to do anything." Jin raised his bowl and praised him loudly. "Not at all. Providing recovery through meals at the base is also a healer's duty, isn't it?" That bowl contained Tuo's special recovery soup, seasoned by General. Seeing this, Tua looked up and said softly, "You did a great job." He sniffed and spoke politely. "That flavor is partly thanks to my special seasoning." Magi, sitting opposite, laughed gleefully and flattered him. "Master, you're truly amazing. Not just as a healer, but you seem to know so much about the front lines. I wonder why." Hearing this, Jin just nodded in satisfaction and explained, "The front line is where the most people get injured. If you treat them there, basic knowledge naturally accumulates." Tua added, "Master often travels to many different locations. That's why he rarely teaches formal classes." Gue took a small sip of the soup to savor it. "Aren't those places very dangerous?" "I'm confident in my ability to escape." Ren raised his hand and spoke firmly. "You say that, but unless you need to save someone, you never run away." Losing Master would be a heavy blow to humanity. Not only because he's an excellent healer, but also because he's one of the few who knows what to do in actual combat. Zhu thought to himself, "Destiny might have changed for me and the others, but there's still time before that incident occurs." His eyes narrowed, more pensive than ever. For some reason, he picked up his bowl and gulped it down, swearing to himself that in this life, he would absolutely not let his master die. Gue finished the large bowl quickly. Seeing this, Jin said shyly, "Your food is quite good. Have another bowl. Master is wonderful." The atmosphere in the small tent was livelier than ever. Meanwhile, someone was quietly adjusting their army in the dark of night. A hand reached out, revealing an eye symbol emitting a massive surge of power. The power of the Crimson Moon. Right here, the monsters grinned savagely, their eyes bloodshot and red. At the same time, a massive foot stepped out. It was, or, one of the higher-ranking monsters. The next day, we set out to hunt goblins once again. We shared our experiences from yesterday's battle, and our teamwork had improved significantly. We thought that at this rate, the mission could be completed by tomorrow. However, the three of them stood straight with grim expressions, their feet still planted on the soft green grass. Jin called out, making Will and Magi turn their heads simultaneously. "Let's head back." Magi suddenly protested, her voice questioning, "Why? We haven't even taken down a single one today." Will couldn't help but wonder, is there something up ahead? Jin didn't answer directly, only explaining calmly. On the contrary, there's no trace of anything. Goblins have a very strong sense of territory. If an outsider intrudes, they'd rush out to attack like yesterday. But we've come this far and haven't seen a single one. A voice rang out. Master just noticed. "What's going on?" He sighed heavily and replied in a low voice, "I don't know, but on the battlefield, you should trust your instincts." Jin turned and waved his hand, ordering, "That's enough for today. Fall back." By the way, call another nearby group to regroup. Magi looked up and spoke instinctively. I believe Professor Vazanika's group has a base nearby. Hearing that, Rin turned back with a faint smile, his eyes crinkling. You're quite well informed. Let's go. One stepped forward, scanning the surroundings bit by bit. 3 people walked through the desolate forest where not a single animal lived. This behavior was unusual for their species. I have a bad feeling about this. Magi went ahead, clearing the branches to lead the way. We'll reach the path near the neighboring base soon. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating a warm atmosphere. I can't stop thinking about my past life. Even though I know it's impossible, but... Ju froze, his face darkening. He saw a small hand tightly bound by a large rope. A small, somber face without a smile stared downward. It was Ezuka. She was tied tightly to a straight wooden pole. Magi rushed forward, reaching out and shouting excitedly. I'll save you right now. She stepped quickly, unaware that her small feet were nearing danger. Magi quickly tumbled into a trap. Covered in mud, Ju immediately shouted from a distance. She pulled something out from behind her with a determined look. Magi was quickly pulling it out of the ground. She held up a spear for protection, a deep smile on her face as she said reassuringly, I'm okay. The 2 of them stood frozen, speechless. A trap? And they used Ezuka as bait? While Will was still reeling, Jin stood in front of him and shouted loudly, Hey! More of them are coming. A sharp spear came flying toward them. They immediately took a defensive stance. Ju shouted in a rage, We're surrounded. The monsters swarmed forward with fierce momentum. At that moment, Magi also managed to scramble out of the trap. Will's eyes were now cold and terrifying. He lowered his voice, We're surrounded. The monsters kept stepping closer, showing no fear. Juan frowned and cursed inwardly. Asterisk how cunning. They're hunting humans. This is exactly like the movement of monsters after the Crimson Moon. No, the Crimson Moon shouldn't appear for another 2 years. Could that tragedy have already begun? Asterisk. The bound Ezuka let out a soft, pained groan. He turned his head in surprise, thinking, she's still alive. There's no time to think about this anymore. I've gained the strength to fight for moments like these. Magi gripped her great sword, her heart aching as she told herself, I'm so glad she's alive, but... One jumped down and shouted, Leave this to me. Combining plant manipulation with what he had learned, he shouted an order, Manifest. The monsters didn't back down, responding with a guttural roar. One saw her trembling and spoke directly, Magi, you don't need to be on the front line. Standing behind the melee unit makes it easier to exploit openings. She quickly replied, Understood. More importantly, charge your energy accurately. Her entire body glowed brilliantly. His footsteps suddenly faltered as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He unleashed a wide-range attack to break their formation. Magi didn't stay still either, declaring, Watch my full power strike. Suddenly, a monster tried to ambush her from behind. In an instant, a sword strike took it down. A voice rang out, I'll cover you. Don't let a single one through. The monster was left behind her, slumped on the grass. Jin praised them from afar. Well done, you two. I'll rescue her. Will quickly ran off and shouted back. Right behind you, master. Suddenly, he turned his head, a chill running down his spine. This terrible feeling. His pupils dilated instantly. The influence of the Crimson Moon includes making them aggressive, plus. Jin quickly ran toward Ezuka. He stepped quickly, unaware of the change beneath the ground. A massive figure suddenly rose, blocking his view, causing the monsters to coordinate their attacks. That's an ore. It was hiding underground. This is bad. The distance is too far. I won't make it in time. It raised its fist toward Jin. It was just like this in my past life. Master never abandons the injured. From now on, you will be the greatest healer in the world. He watched, his face contorting as he gritted his teeth. No matter how great a healer someone is, if they keep living like that, it'll take many lifetimes to fix. The fist was closing in. A helpless voice cried out, Master! Jin froze for a moment, speechless. The monster reached out powerfully, stepping forward with more majesty than ever. He gave a faint smile and wondered in a low voice, Wait, what is this? Was that physical enhancement just now? Did Master use recovery magic to attack? The monster used its sharp, blood-red eyes to fiercely try and eliminate everyone around it. It swung its arms wildly at Jin, but luckily, he nimbly dodged. Ren's feet leaped off the ground, leaving bits of earth on his cloth shoes. He rushed behind the monster to deliver a surprise attack. Jin placed his hand on the back of its neck and whispered a farewell. Well then, sleep tight. A beam of blue light shot straight through the monster's neck, terrifying it. It immediately sensed the danger from behind and groaned, frowning. With one quick ambush, Jin had taken down the monster, leaving it sprawled on the green grass. Ju rushed to Jin's side and shouted, "Master, that moved just now." He didn't explain in detail, only replying softly, something like that. A good teacher also learns from his disciples, though I just thought of it myself. Both Wan and Magi smiled brightly, showering him with praise. He said, "As expected." Magi quickly added, "That was incredible." Jin reached out to untie the ropes, regaining his initial calm as he ordered, "All right, let's retreat while we still can." Wan looked over with a grim expression. The monsters were still struggling with each other. He asked in a low voice, "With Master's strength, couldn't you just wipe them all out?" Jin sighed helplessly and explained, "I only put the or to sleep. I'm a healer. Even if it's a monster, I have no intention of hurting it. When it wakes up, it'll feel refreshed." Wan ran from behind, looking at his master's back. A slight smile played on his lips. "That's Master for you." We broke through the Orse encirclement. After taking down a few pursuers, they seemed to have given up. The four of them stopped in an open area. Wan said in a low voice, "We can rest here for a bit." Jin reached out and worked hard to treat Ezuka. He called out softly, "Hey, little girl, wake up." She suddenly opened her eyes in surprise. Ezuka sat up, and the first thing she asked was, "Where am I?" Magi immediately reassured her, "You're safe now." Ju reached out respectfully and asked politely, "Sorry for asking as soon as you woke up, but what happened? Why were you alone, Ezuka?" Ezuka looked panicked, holding her head in fear as she asked back, "Alone?" "Yesterday's conquest went very smoothly. I wasn't holding everyone back, but every time I let my guard down, something bad happens. When I woke up this morning, Professor Vizonica had disappeared." One suddenly repeated the name. "Professor Vizonica?" Ezuka recounted everything. "She left a note telling me to wait, but didn't say when she'd be back, so I was very worried. While discussing it with the other two, somehow it ended up with me going to find her." His face darkened as he looked at her searchingly. "They convinced you, and you couldn't say no, right?" He thought to himself, "That's so like Ezuka. But this can't be taken lightly. One wrong step, and you could lose your life. None of us are prepared enough to face a situation so different from class or drills, *. Ezuka didn't answer, only continued worriedly. "After entering the forest, I smelled a sweet scent, and when I woke up, I was here." Jin held his head in frustration and spoke up. "So the goblins used a sleeping drug. That trap earlier, and them cooperating with the ore. What on earth is going on?" "No, now isn't the time to think about that. Anyway, your base is nearby. Let's go regroup with the other two." The four of them immediately lined up and moved quickly. Ezuka, walking in front, suddenly froze and whispered, "This way. Wait." She looked up, a look of panic crossing her face. Looking at the mess in front of her, she simply said, "The base, it's destroyed." Magi suddenly spoke up. "I looked into this before. Goblins are highly territorial, meaning they usually don't leave their domain. So a base outside their territory should have been safe. Yet, it ended up like this. Why? Wan pondered for a long time. Actively attacking humans. That's also a characteristic of monsters that appear after the Crimson Moon. It's currently unexplainable. Jin crouched down to scout the area and said, "There are no signs of a struggle. It seems those two ran off somewhere. We'll split up. I'll go find those two. You three join up with Tuo and leave the forest. Don't think your base is safe. Stay alert." The response came quickly. "Understood." We rushed back to our base. Ju pushed the door open and called out loudly, "Are you okay?" Tuo heard the noise while cooking and paused for a moment before asking, "You're back? Lunch isn't ready yet." Magi could finally breathe a sigh of relief. "Thank goodness, you're safe." Tuo still didn't understand what was happening and asked, "What's going on?" Wan turned to leave and called back, "I'll explain later. We have to leave right now." He froze for a moment, eyes wide. Both of them were surprised by the sight before them. He whispered, "They're here. We're being followed." Ezuka gasped in surprise and shouted, "What? What should we do? What do we do?" In response to that surprise, Ju only said, "I just realized how weak I've been." Ezuka paused as if guessing his intent and asked, "What do you mean?" He turned around, a slight smirk on his lips as he said softly, "Let's take it down. The three of us together. I believe we can win." The monsters still stood tall before them, looking determined and terrifying. Juan watched the monsters cautiously. Facing this large pack, our coordination is the key to survival. He didn't forget to remind his teammates, "Magi, don't rush in too far like before. Just use your strikes to support the vanguard." No sooner said than done. Juan acted immediately. Leave the vanguard position to the golem. He continuously provided the best strategy. Ezuka, use fire to block the goblin's advance. But on the contrary, Ezuka was extremely insecure. But someone like me, I was captured so easily. Even so, Ju smiled to encourage her. "It's okay. Your flames will be very useful." Being recognized, Ezuka couldn't help but be surprised. She was still worried and trying to regain her composure. Not wanting to let Juan down, Ezuka used all her strength to cast fire magic. In an instant, the goblins were surrounded by flames. Fearing being burned alive, they began to retreat one by one. Ezuka shouted excitedly, "I did it!" But Juan didn't have long to breathe a sigh of relief before he noticed something unusual. "Good. Now we won't be overwhelmed by the massive wave of goblins all at once." From the fire, a sturdy hoof slowly stepped out. His toned muscles made the flames retreat. It was an oar, stepping out boldly to challenge them. One was also a bit surprised. It was on a completely different level from the goblins. After thinking, he ordered the wooden puppet to charge. Golem. At the same time, he directed Ezuka rhythmically. "Ezuka, fire." She quickly took the order. The puppet's body was wrapped in fire as it charged at the oar. The flames spread to its entire body, making it howl in pain. Seizing the opportunity, one turned to call for support. "Magi." Magi quickly seized the moment. "I'm on it." She swung her sword from behind, making the oar vulnerable. He was knocked back, sprawling on the ground. Magi happily high-fived Ezuka in celebration. Great coordination. One still didn't dare to relax. The coordination was certainly good, but the reason he hesitated was that the oar kept getting back up. It seemed it wasn't enough. What was also alert enough to recognize its power? Regeneration. Magi began to feel worried. Do we have to keep doing this until it can't revive anymore? Well, wasn't in a rush, just thinking deeply. No. Does its regeneration power have a limit? There's no guarantee we can take it down if we just keep attacking like this. If we're going to finish it, we need a more certain method. But then, Ezuka's panic shout pulled him back to reality. Something is coming. Juan stood alone against the powerful energy rushing toward him. But when he slowly opened his eyes, a dagger was right in front of him. That's right, a monster was attacking him. The goblins? Looking further, he could see the oar holding them in its hands, preparing to aim. One didn't waste words and sent the monster to its grave. Damn it, these snipers are annoying. Ezuka sharply noticed another monster flying down from above. They're appearing again. Magi powerfully ran up and gave them a kick that sent them flying. She seemed to have a plan of her own. "I'll send them back." After saying that, Magi knocked the monster far away. "Come here." This was the moment she proved her reliability. "Lord Juan, looking at your face, it seems you've thought of a plan. So, leave this part to me." Hearing that, Will could act with peace of mind. "I'm counting on you." He put all his trust in his teammates. Blocked the large number of goblins with Ezuka and Golem's wide-range attacks. And Magi will deflect any incoming projectiles. With nothing left to worry about, Will charged into close combat with the oar. "Now, I just need to deal with this, or..." It quickly sensed his presence, but Will was one step faster and dodged the attack. From a distance, only the dust and smoke of the battlefield could be seen. The oar repeatedly missed its attacks, while Juan landed a strike on its lower body. This made it grit its teeth even more. The oar roared in anger, echoing through the forest. The wound on its chest that Ju had just attacked closed up instantly. Even the cut on its wrist was quickly restored. But before it knew it, Juan was behind it. "You're wide open." He deployed magic right behind the oar. "This is the finishing blow." One didn't hesitate to use magic to defeat it in one move. Vitality surge. The oar's heart began to feel a sharp pain. Its whole body trembled as it let out a weak groan. Its eyes rolled back, and tears began to flow. The scene suddenly became gruesome. Blood sprayed everywhere. The outcome was clear. One smiled triumphantly. The battle is over. The oar collapsed on the grass. Finally, he could breathe a sigh of relief. By forcing the oar's regeneration ability to overwork, the burst of vitality caused its body to explode. It can't regenerate from this. He turned and declared arrogantly, "Now, the only thing left is to wipe out the remaining goblins." After the declaration, the monsters were sent to eternity one by one. Bodies and heads were scattered across the ground. The battle finally ended. Before them was a battlefield filled with monster corpses. Ju could finally relax his whole body. With this, Ezuka was exhausted from fighting. Only Magi was still full of energy, rushing over excitedly. A complete victory, right? Will didn't hold back his praise for the girls. Everyone's coordination was great. Ezuka still seemed scared. Luckily we managed. But Will was still worried. It's not over yet. The others are still. In another part of the forest, a whirlwind was sweeping through everything. Juan's group also witnessed it. He immediately recognized it. That's CIO. Thinking this, Gue took the lead. If we head toward that whirlwind, we'll probably regroup with the other teams. At the same time, CIO was rebalancing his magic. Suddenly, a call made him look toward the source of the sound. CIO, are you okay? Seeing Ju's group unharmed, CIO was relieved. I'm glad everyone is all right. Not far from them, a man stepping on a pile of monsters spoke up. It was Bot. He was a bit confused. This formation isn't right. Where are the professor and the others? Just then, Jin appeared out of nowhere and replied, "We're here." In his place, Juan ran up anxiously. "Master, you found them both." Jin explained, "You could say that." Then a whirlwind happened to kick up, so we headed toward it. He patted Juan's shoulder, unable to hide his satisfaction. "Everyone did a great job. I trusted you, and I'm glad no one was hurt." The whole group beamed at the praise. Bot cut in with a reminder. "Wait, the atmosphere makes it seem like everything is done, but aren't we still missing someone?" One observed once more. "Right, Professor Vizonica." Bot was still uneasy. "I'm not too worried about her, but we can't just retreat without saying anything." Jin immediately proposed a plan. "Then I'll watch over the remaining students. Those who can handle themselves, split up and search." He seemed to agree. CIO and the next person assigned was Will. "You go look." The two young men immediately took the order. "Yes, sir." A while later, Ju was on his journey to find the lost person. "I'm enhancing my hearing to sense the presence of living beings." Suddenly, a sound rang in his ear. "But I'm not skilled enough to distinguish them, so I have to search manually." Looking toward the sound, he saw Vizonica's back. "Found her. It looks like she's safe." Will quickly called out, "Professor Vizonica." In her hand, she was holding a glowing red stone. Vizonica slowly turned her head at the sound. As soon as he saw it, Juan's face darkened. That light. Could it be related to the crimson moon? On her side, she quickly tucked the stone into her bag. Vizonica grumbled, "Juan, what are you doing here?" He hadn't quite regained his composure yet. And then he remembered the main issue. "What am I doing?" "I'm looking for you, Professor." The monsters went wild, so the field training is probably over. Strangely, she coldly brushed past him. "Is that so? Then let's head back." Noticing something was off, Ju immediately called after her, "Wait." He asked bluntly, "That stone just now, what was it?" But Vizonica only replied dismissively, "It's nothing." But Gue didn't believe her and kept questioning. "You say it's nothing? Besides, what have you been doing all this time?" Abandoning the other students. The more he asked, the more worried he became, his body starting to tremble. "Please, answer me." Vizonica was stopped by those words. She spoke in a low, murderous tone. "I'm sorry, but it seems I didn't choose the right method." Vizonica's eyes showed a clear threat. "It would be best if you kept quiet about this." Will himself didn't know why things had turned out this way. But in the end, she turned and walked away without a fight. "Don't worry, I won't do anything bad." After that, I couldn't say anything more to Professor Vizonica. Even if I wanted to press further, I didn't have the power. Above all, I wasn't ready to doubt Professor Vizonica, my comrade from my past life. And just like that, the field training ended. The day after returning from training, Will was still in a state of confusion. Asterisk, I barely slept last night. This means Professor Vazonica is involved with the Crimson Moon. But in my past life, asterisk, while thinking, he saw something ahead. In front of the gate, two people were having a secretive conversation. It was none other than the person one was just thinking about, Professor Vazonica. He quickly suppressed his mana temporarily, hiding my presence. Ju leaned against a corner of the wall and turned on his eavesdropping ability. I can't let them find me. The man standing opposite Vazonica asked quietly. Yes, I've received your request to leave the academy. Where do you plan to go? But she only gave a short reply. Personal business. His mind quickly raced. Personal business outside the academy. It's probably related to that red stone. Thinking this, he made up his mind. It seems I have no choice but to follow her. Vazonica left the academy shortly after. From behind, one was a total stalker. One felt like he was being too hasty. Asterisk, I just followed her without thinking. In the blink of an eye, Vazonica was gone. If I'm wrong about this, I'm just a stalker. Asterisk. Memories of his past life flooded one's mind. Asterisk, but I can't worry about being misunderstood. Especially when there's a chance to learn about that tragedy. Asterisk, he swore to himself, and to clear Vazonica's name. But something strange made one look around. Asterisk, wait, this is the first time I've been back here since my past life. After I graduated from the Healing Academy, the monsters were already rampant. I was sent to battlefields everywhere. I'm pretty sure I visited this town back then. Asterisk. He was thinking, but then he stopped to look at Vazonica. If I remember correctly, it turns out she was just buying bread at a small bakery. Memories of his past life returned. One was holding a piece of bread in his hand. He looked at it, his heart blooming. Honey bread. Without waiting, he took a bite. The delicious flavor made his eyes light up. So good, Vazonica agreed. This place is very famous. Juan took the opportunity to make more conversation. I'm from the countryside, so I almost never buy food like this. You were born into a merchant family in the city, so you must eat this stuff all the time, right, Vazonica? She calmly replied, that's right. But it's not just because of my background. My rule is that whenever I see a bakery, I have to stop in. This made one even more curious. A rule. Vazonica didn't hide it anymore. She slowly recounted her life. From trading trips with her parents to growing up and braving battlefields. I've met a lot of people. Her eyes suddenly held a strange amount of reflection. And I almost never see them a second time. Even if I do, they've changed so much they're like different people. For that reason, Vazonica set a rule. I don't want to have regrets when that happens. So I forbid myself from ever saying later. In that case, one didn't need to be formal anymore. He said bluntly, I see. No wonder you're always so direct. To the point where everyone is afraid of you. That information surprised her. I didn't think you thought of me that way. But then, Vazonica changed the subject. And besides, I don't know when I'll die. Will didn't like talking about this much. Don't say such pessimistic things. But she bluntly denied his words. I'm not being pessimistic, nor do I plan to die. I'm just living my life to the fullest in the present. Suddenly, her voice softened. But, she looked at him with expectation. If so, will you protect me? The one of the past life didn't hesitate to accept. I promise. Back to the present, the memory made his heart ache a little. He stood in the middle of the street, blaming himself. Asterisk, in the end, I still let Vazonica die. This time, I swear I will protect her. Asterisk. The more he thought, the more determined one became. Asterisk, and to do that, I need to find the truth. With these eyes, asterisk, so Will followed Vazonica even more closely. She began to walk into a secluded corner behind a building. Seeing her stand before a large iron gate made Ju even more suspicious. No matter how you look at it, this is suspicious. He couldn't stop worrying. Asterisk, will she be okay, Vazonica? I need to enhance my presence concealment skill. Asterisk, a moment later, Vazonica stepped inside. Of course, one couldn't not go in. He sat in a corner of the wall and heard another person's voice. We've been waiting for you. A person in a black cloak stood in front. I'm very sorry for calling you to a place like this, but this is important. The person pulled down the hood to reveal purple hair. It was Inret. She was full of schemes. Now then, about the item we discussed. Vazonica just silently looked at her opponent. A moment later, She pulled out the red stone, making Enret gasp. This is... She quickly grabbed the stone. But the next second, she frowned slightly. Enret held up the stone in joy. This is wonderful. She then began to flatter her. You truly are talented. Yes, of course. I always believed so. Perhaps Will was starting to hear the information he wanted. With this, our church's greatest wish. Enret couldn't help but reveal the plan. We are getting closer to the crimson moon again. Those words made Will's face darken. He immediately connected all the events. Asterisk, I knew it. This really is related to the crimson moon. And this church too. Asterisk, the spell Will was using began to run out of time. Vazanika sensed something was wrong just a second later, but Will only then realized the situation. First of all, my presence concealment skill has worn off. Without thinking, Vazanika drew her sword and charged straight at him. Ju was scared out of his wits, eyes wide. Juan was so terrified he could only call out loudly, Professor Vazanika. She stood before him, her body trembling slightly. So you followed me after all. The dragon before them was becoming increasingly aggressive. Just then, footsteps were heard from afar. I told you, didn't I, that you had to come alone. Enret held the gemstone in her hand, speaking with feigned regret. I'm very sad that you broke our agreement. I really thought our cult was about to gain another fellow believer. Hearing that, Vazanika coldly swung her sword down. Just so you know, this was an accident. That attitude made her quickly try to play nice. Oh dear, I guess I jumped to conclusions. In that case, if we just eliminate this witness, the cult will be more than happy to welcome you. Will was startled by those words. On the contrary, Vazanika pointed her sword forward and bluntly replied, I refuse. I only came here to investigate. I have no intention of sacrificing my precious student. Seeing the tense situation, he hurriedly stood up. Professor Vazanika, I'm sorry, but I need to know what's going on. Vazanika immediately turned and cut him off. It's my fault for not explaining sooner. That day, I sensed something unusual in the forest. What I found, there was a monster in a frenzy, and her eyes narrowed, flashing a cold light. Before her, under the grass, was a red stone. At that time, Vazanika had picked it up. This stone, this feeling, she clenched her hand, channeling a source of magic into it. When I channeled magic into it, it emitted a red light. At that moment, Enret stepped out as if she had been waiting for a long time. I didn't expect to find a potential fellow believer in a place like this. She clasped her hands as if praying. This must be the guidance of the higher power and proof of the mission I was given. Seeing this, Vazanika was immediately alert. Who are you? Enret approached with a smile. I'd love to tell you many things, but we have rules. Saying this, she raised a finger and reminded her in a low voice. If you want to learn about that stone and about us, there are 2 conditions. Before she could speak, the opponent rambled on. First, you must keep making it shine to prove your worth. Second, you must not tell anyone and must come to the designated place alone. And your reliability. Enret placed her hand on her chest with an apologetic look. I'm sorry for testing you like this, but I truly hope you will become our fellow believer. Back to the present, she bluntly refused the offer. Therefore, I intended to infiltrate to investigate secretly. Recalling her attitude toward Ju earlier, she said, I thought I made it clear that I wouldn't let anything happen. But she coldly turned to leave. It's okay. I said I wouldn't let anything bad happen. Hearing that, he trembled slightly behind her. That's not enough of an explanation. Vazanika continued softly. You're right. I'm sorry. Finally, Will breathed a sigh of relief. But I'm just glad you're not a bad person, Professor Vazanika. Enret, opposite them, slowly interrupted. So that means your desire to join the cult was just a lie. Now I'm even sadder. As soon as she finished speaking, she dropped the stone in her hand. The water made a sound, accompanied by a voice full of regret. I didn't think I'd have to eliminate someone so talented. Immediately, Gue sensed something was wrong. The stone you received from Professor Vazanika. You threw it in the water? That stone suddenly flashed a red light. In the deep depths, the Octodako were gradually awakened. Even the surrounding beasts seemed to be controlled by something. The water suddenly surged violently. From below, a series of monsters roared as they emerged. By this time, Enret had silently retreated. She clapped her hands and cheered excitedly. How wonderful! Even within the cult, Those who can grant power this storm-like are very rare. Looking at the monsters before him, Will was stunned. A water dragon? It's this powerful. Vazanika carefully calculated the number. 2, 3, 8 in total. Hearing that, he immediately cut in. I'll take half. She flatly refused and charged forward. No. Vazanika gripped the sword in her hand. It's not necessary. Magic radiated from the sword. Vazanika spun and swung her sword. Magic sword, Gale Strike. A series of sharp slashes from the blade headed straight for the water dragon. Ju was frozen by the sight, as expected of Professor Vazanika. At that moment, Vazanika's eyes flashed with a sharp coldness. Part of a water dragon's body collapsed to the ground. Seeing that, she leaped away quickly. Ju ran up worriedly and asked, "Are you okay?" Vazanika steadied her breath and replied, "Yes." Looking at that moving body part, she was momentarily shocked. No way. It took that hit, and it's still alive? No matter how strong its regeneration is, how could it not die immediately after being decapitated? Heads quickly grew back, terrifying the two of them. It's regenerating from that too. No healing magic does that. At this time, Ju also took out a dagger, preparing to fight. Something's wrong. Could it be? A water dragon suddenly lunged to attack him. It dove its head into the ground. Ju quickly dodged. He spun and swung the dagger in his hand. The slash suddenly stopped at the creature's flesh. Gue trembled, trying to pull the dagger out. Asterisk this soft body. I knew it. Asterisk. He immediately hugged its body tightly. In that case. Then he shouted a reminder. Professor Vazanika, I have a trick I want to try. Please step back. Vazanika didn't say much and retreated. I understand. But don't overdo it. Gue used physical enhancement power. Limit release. He shouted loudly. Just a little bit over. His feet slammed into the ground. His fingers gripped the water dragon's skin tightly. Immediately after, Will lifted it up, revealing a giant octodako. Come out. Hurry up. Hurry up. Now Vazanika could clearly see it. I see. I thought it was decapitated and still wouldn't die. Looking at the octodako before her made her shiver slightly. So that wasn't a head. It was a tentacle. The giant thing that just appeared was a cephalopod monster, Octodako. Familiar footsteps approached again. So you saw through that dragon's true form in the blink of an eye. Enret placed her hand on her chest and sighed. Wonderful. No, not wonderful at all. Saying this, she shouted loudly. The cult doesn't seek combatability. It'll be a nuisance if I don't eliminate you here. Then Anret slowly took out an object. At this rate, I'll be going against the cult's wishes. The mysterious cult member, Anret, took out a scepter and declared, Then I, Anret, will take the liberty of handling this myself. One seemed to have already made his calculations. Professor Vazanika, can you handle that monster for me? Recalling her moves from earlier, he explained, Your magic sword will deal with that soft body more effectively than my method. Vazanika didn't seem at ease. She agreed, but she couldn't let her student be in danger. Ju suddenly grabbed her hand. The source of power from his body quickly transferred. Physical enhancement. Once finished, he said with a smile, I'll be right back after finishing him. Vazanika was dazed by the instruction. Until then, remember to be careful. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly. She muttered, I have quite a bold student. Immediately after, Vazanika held her sword and stepped forward. Fine, but you must be careful of one thing. She turned back and said something very quietly. That person is probably. Will's eyes widened in surprise. No way. Hearing that, Vazanika reminded him. You yourself proved that it's not impossible. He understood and immediately rushed off. I understand. Enret stood there calmly. That's fast. The corners of her mouth curled into a smug smile. Then I shall also. At that moment, Gue was prepared to swing his blade. Enret easily blocked the attack instantly. He was momentarily stunned. He blocked it. Looking at him slashing frantically, Enret seemed excited. Don't you also have wonderful talent? Her eyes suddenly flicked to the side. Immediately after, both temporarily stopped their attacks. Enret touched the cut on her face. It grazed me. Her finger lightly brushed the fresh blood. That hurts. So, a surge of power radiated from her fingertip. Allow me to heal myself. At this time, Vazanika suddenly approached. That stone has a passive mana flow with the same wavelength as attack magic. You used the opposite method, but, in other words, he is. Looking at the gradually healing wound, she immediately realized, just like you, a battle-ready healer. That information stunned Juan for a moment. A combat method using healing magic. Did you think of it yourself? Enret looked up and explained, of course not. How could I think of such things? The scepter in her hand glowed. However, even someone like me, Enret. She waved her hand to one side, and the ground immediately exploded. Can do this much thanks to the cult's teachings. Juan's eyes were fixed on the scepter. Asterisk, so it existed since then. A combat method for healers. Asterisk, recalling how he used to blame himself. I should have fought with my own hands. Now Ju trembled as he gripped the dagger's hilt. Just how far have they progressed? In front of him, Enret continued. On that point, it seems you were born with talent. I'm quite jealous. Thinking of a mysterious person. She chuckled hoarsely. I really want you to meet that person. Saying this, Vazanika asked excitedly, what do you think? Are you interested in the cult? Juan angrily interrupted. That's enough. He clenched his fist and said in a low voice, I will never become one of you. Ju's eyes suddenly flashed red. Not even if I'm reincarnated. A flash of light streaked before Andrit's eyes. Energy gradually poured out of her body. How unfortunate. After saying that, she took a leap and charged. Andret swung her scepter, her mouth curling into a twisted smile. Then in the end, I'll just have to destroy you. Juan gritted his teeth to withstand this sudden attack. He trembled as he blocked the opponent's powerful force. Physical enhancement, it's quite powerful when used. Juan thought about their mysterious appearance and the red stone from before. A cult. The bodies and energies of the two were in opposite states. His pupils glowed. Healing magic and attack magic. There's too much I don't understand. Enret was still frantically wanting to fight. But I just need to interrogate this person about everything. He gritted his teeth and used his strength to push the opponent away. The unexpected power helped. Then maybe I can avoid that tragedy. Seizing the opportunity, he quickly turned. Ju delivered a kick straight into Enret. Being unexpectedly counterattacked pushed her back. On the contrary, she still smirked excitedly. At this rate, it seems I might lose. Suddenly, Enret raised the scepter in her hand. However, I have the cult backing me. The red stone immediately glowed. Physical enhancement. Andrit's pupils immediately turned red. One of her arms became giant. This power. Blue veins began to bulge on her cheeks. Despite being transformed, Enret still howled with delight. Wonderful. Well, had already sensed something was wrong. This clearly exceeds the normal physical enhancement of healing magic. Then he shouted a question. Who taught you that kind of magic? Hearing that, Enret placed her hand on her chest respectfully. It's all thanks to the cult's guidance. Recalling when she stood dazed in the crowd. Until then, I just lived aimlessly without caring about anything. Enret clumsily healed amidst insults. I was hired by a magic team as a healer, only knowing how to follow the orders of some arrogant guy. Those days were so boring. Saying this, she gave a self-deprecating laugh. If you're also a healer, you'll understand one day. Her words reminded him of Andrit's group, that this world is full of people not worth saving. The red stone was then handed to her. The cult gave me power and enlightenment. The more she spoke, the more excited Enret became. Since then, my life has finally begun to shine. One held the dagger firmly. He countered, I don't know what you've realized, but what you're doing is wrong. Then he couldn't help but shout. At this rate, many people will lose their lives. Enret swung her arm to block the attack. She remained calm. Even so, it doesn't matter. The moment of the apocalypse is coming, she whispered. Because the cult says it's okay. Immediately after, Enret swung her arm, sending him flying against the wall. Ju spat out a mouthful of blood. Now she walked toward him step by step. So justice wins, huh? Ju lowered his head in silence, not responding. Just because of one person who is so empty. In his mind, he suddenly thought of his loved ones. Master, Professor Vazanika. How many people had to die at this person's hands? One gritted his teeth, unwilling to give in. Seeing this, Andrit's expression flickered. He clutched his injured arm and slowly stood up, shocking her. You can still stand? Andrit's eyes widened in horror. But with those injuries, energy gradually gathered around his arm. The wounds on it healed instantly. And Rhett couldn't help but ask, "You healed that wound instantly? What kind of recovery power is that?" At this time, Ju held his head and said in a low voice, "I will not forgive you." He brushed his hair back, revealing sharp eyes. "I'll make you pay with pain." Seeing this, Rhett charged angrily. "This time, I'll destroy you instantly, so you don't have a chance to recover." One also threw a punch with powerful force. The strong pressure caused the entire space to vibrate significantly, and Rhett couldn't withstand that attack for a moment. The corners of his mouth curled up as one issued a challenge. "Is that all the screaming you've got?" He spun around, and his fist swung again. "I'm not done with you yet." Andret's eyes widened, showing clear terror. So fast. Instantly, she took a punch from him. Fresh red blood poured from her nose and mouth. Rhett was punched meters away. Then she lay motionless on the ground. Seeing this, Ju slowly approached. "Did she pass out? I'll deal with her later." Then he suddenly remembered. "Oh right, Professor Vizonica." Before him, Vizonica was fighting the Octodako. Her eyes flashed with a sharp coldness. With one swing, the sword cut through the creature's tentacle. A powerful energy radiated as Vizonica slowly sheathed her sword. Immediately after, the sliced meat fell to the ground. She smiled at him. "You finished on that side too?" Vizonica glanced into the distance and continued. "That one had high recovery, so it took some time." One understood in his heart. So the monster was a tougher opponent? As expected of Professor Vizonica. He slowly turned his head. Then, the two approached and lightly patted Andret's face. As soon as she opened her eyes, she saw one with a bright smile. "Now, spill everything." Ju used force to pin Rhett down, causing her pain. Before she could recover, a sharp blade was at her throat. She was about to be buried but was still stubborn. And then, "Don't make such a scary face." One only replied coldly, "That depends on you." He interrogated her bluntly. "I have a lot to ask. But what is the cult? What is its goal?" Rhett only replied vaguely. A believer is not allowed to reveal information to outsiders. More surprisingly, she suddenly grabbed the knife and kept saying crazy things. "Always dedicate your life to the cult." Then, she went mad and slit her own throat. The act of suicide made Ju freeze, unable to believe his eyes. Andret's eyes were bloodshot after the recent pain. Even at the brink of death, she carried an obsession. "I take my own life to protect the cult's secrets." What a perfect believer. With this, my soul will be guided to the world that Lord Leo always desired. By the time she passed away, Rhett still had a satisfied smile. But suddenly, Rhett slowly woke up. "My mind feels strangely clear." She couldn't even die if she wanted to. My wound is gone." Rhett felt increasingly strange. "I clearly stabbed my own throat." The feeling of pain when the cold blade cut her throat and the hot blood gushed out was real. Unexpectedly, one also confirmed she had ended her life. "I was surprised when you killed yourself. I underestimated your faith." He laughed provocatively. "But I've healed you." Rhett couldn't believe it and kept denying. "That's impossible. I should have died almost instantly." One didn't hesitate to explain. "If it's almost, then it means you didn't die instantly. I can heal that." Rhett insisted on not believing. "That is impossible for a normal healer." Having said that, he also warned her. "Who said I'm normal? In the future, I'll become the best healer in the world." Ju continued with the interrogation. "Do you realize? If I can heal someone on the brink of death, it means I can torture you to the very edge of death." Hearing that, Rhett fell silent. Realizing the seriousness, her eyes gradually fell into panic. One took advantage and gave a despicable smile. "So, are you ready to talk?" Fear was plastered on Andret's face. No way. At this rate, I have no choice but to talk. But the next second, her pupils contracted as if hypnotized. She was pulled into a mysterious space. A voice kept urging in her ear, "Die for it." Andret's face showed clear panic. Suddenly, her tears fell to the ground. Will's expression also changed quickly. Rhett trembled in pain, her eyes rolling back. Vizonica quickly sensed something was wrong. "Step back, Will. Something's not right." Will also quickly released her and stepped back. In an instant, her entire head and limbs evaporated. The two standing there watched in shock. Looking closely at the ground, Rhett had turned into a withered corpse. Will couldn't believe his eyes, and ran over. What? He immediately tried to heal her. Wait, don't die. Seeing his effort, Vazanika could only helplessly say, it's no use. Will stopped and began to analyze. His life force vanished in an instant. Some kind of curse, and an extremely powerful one at that. Will still had many questions. Who is behind this person? Vazanika then asked him, are you okay? Will replied with some regret, I'm fine. But this guy now. He felt guilty. This was supposed to be an opportunity to extract information. It's my fault for coming along. I'm sorry, but she had a generous heart and didn't mind. As long as the students are safe, that's enough. Vazanika smiled gently and said, let's head back to the academy. On the way back, Ju kept rambling. The red stone was destroyed. In the end, we didn't find out anything. Vazanika remained calm and explained, the cult, the red stone making monsters aggressive. Just knowing these things exist is already a harvest. You can't guard against things you don't even know exist. Of course, he had a similar prediction. Yes, you're right. Compared to my past life, I'm definitely making progress. At this rate, for sure. Even so, Ju still had too many unanswered questions. But I wonder. Taking this opportunity, Vazanika also confided. After all, I'm very glad I participated in the field training. She revealed another secret. I insisted on participating in the field training because I was worried about you. Our school is the only one with 2 teachers coming along, right? Finally, Juan's doubts were partially resolved. Asterisk I see. So Professor Vazanika only realized the existence of that thing in this life. Asterisk. It's never enough. He continued to ask. Thinking back, I've always wanted to ask, how did you think of using static mana to attack, Professor Vazanika? She honestly recounted, I come from a merchant family. Perhaps it's because I had many opportunities to interact with both healers and battle mages. But his thoughts were a bit different. If that's all it took to think of it, then I feel magic research should have progressed much more. Vazanika was equally surprised. Is that so? Then I don't know either. Suddenly, Vazanika remembered something important. But she vaguely sensed a familiarity. I have a feeling someone told me something similar when I was a child. While Will was still reflecting, they arrived in front of the bakery. Could that person be related to the cult? Vazanika wanted to stop in again. Will, let's put these complicated matters aside for now. Do you want to buy some bread? Juan's soul seemed to be pulled back after that question. He nodded happily and agreed immediately. Yes, please. And so, the big mysteries remained. I've gained new strength to avoid destruction. I was scolded for going out without permission. Elsewhere, in a room, the atmosphere was strangely silent. Enret sat neatly on the table, but seemed to have passed away. On her neck, there were snake bite marks. Just then, another voice rang out. That hardworking one died, and now it's come to me. This girl carried a snake with her, her mouth constantly accepting. I'll do it, I'll do it. She held the red stone in her hand, looking at it enchantingly. If that's an order from the cult. A few days had passed since the battle with the cult. At this time, Will and Vazanika were sparring. He kept asking about the information from the other day. Did you find out anything about the cult? She quickly replied, not much. They call themselves a cult, but they don't seem to have made any notable moves. Will expressed clear regret. I wish I could go down to town to gather information too. She showed her strictness. Students need a permit to leave the school. Vazanika emphasized again, and a student's duty is to study. One smiled confidently. I know, but I hate sitting around waiting. So I came up with an idea. As he spoke, he concentrated all his power into his feet. Then he accelerated, dodging Vazanika's strike. Before she knew it, Will had approached her from behind. I plan to find Master Say, the leading expert on monsters. Thinking it was an easy hit, it turned out Vazanika easily blocked it. I see. You plan to use the off-campus study program. However, she still held her own view. I'm pretty sure you need excellent theory scores to register. As she spoke, she slashed her sword, making Ju struggle to block. Do you meet the requirements? He confidently pushed her back. You don't have to worry. Will began to show off. This term, my theory score was the highest in the whole class. Hearing that, Vazanika sheathed her sword and breathed a sigh of relief. Having an outstanding student like you makes me proud too. And you've become more reliable, haven't you? But he still recognized his own limits. I still have a lot to work on, but I've started to realize how much you've raised me. That's good. Just then, Vazanika offered a reward. In that case, it's time for you to choose your core. He was still dazed and didn't understand. Core, she seriously analyzed. You have the creativity to flexibly turn healing measures into attacks. But if you find a style to refine and hone, your fighting style will become stable, and the variety of your choices will shine even more. But Ju replied thoughtlessly, then I'll choose Professor Vazanika. Vazanika emphasized the issue again. What I can teach you is magic swordsmanship. Are you really okay with that? You don't have to rush your decision. Then she quickly made a suggestion. For now, we should go see Master Safe first. One finally understood. I see. After that, he began his journey. I've made an appointment to meet Master CIO, and the weather is very beautiful even though it's far from town. This trip was even better than he expected. A perfect day for off-campus study. The off-campus study program allows you to learn from experts outside the academy. At Quad, we usually visit mages active on the front lines, but you can also experience the most advanced academic fields. Kyodito was a famous monster researcher even in my past life. His achievements were so great that the kingdom awarded him a medal. The more he thought about it, the more we admired him. A true monster scholar, living so far from civilization. But his nature was more curious than that. I wonder if he's ever been attacked by monsters. Suddenly, Will sensed danger and looked up. From above, a series of large rocks were falling like a waterfall. Will quickly brought his mind back to reality. And there are dangers like this too. He used all his speed to run through and dodge each rock. But suddenly, one rock seemed to have targeted him and was heading straight for him. Will quickly concentrated mana into his palm. Then he made a few moves, breaking the rock into many small pieces. Once finished, he calmly regained his composure. But it seems it's not over. He continued to sense something rushing toward him. It was a dart. Will successfully caught it. He carefully examined it. An arrow? Just then, two other people approached. Sorry. The black-haired guy gave an excuse that didn't sound right. A monster trap just misfired. Will didn't want to deal with petty people and was about to leave. Misfired? I almost died. Do you guys know that? But the black-haired guy was still flippant. You're still alive, aren't you? The blonde guy seemed more amicable. We're hunters here. Usually, people don't pass through here. Next time we'll be more careful. Ju just sighed in frustration and continued on. As long as you learn from it. We're in a hurry, so please don't do that again. But it turned out to be just a cover. The blonde guy began to reveal his despicable nature. I've learned my lesson. The two plan to play dirty and jump one. Next time, we'll definitely do it properly. But he just calmly lay down and dodged their attack. Ju glanced over, observing carefully. Seeing everything going smoothly, he gave the two a kick that sent them straight down the cliff. The two survivors still tried to cling to the cliff to hold on. One looked at them with contempt. Those bracelets and rings don't fit at all. Without thinking much, he made a casual remark, clearly stolen goods. Ju's voice suddenly turned cold. He slowly walked toward them. It's funny. I've been thinking about this lately. Whether there's a way to effectively reform bad people. While squeezing the blonde guy's mouth, he came up with a new idea. So, Ju looked at them with burning murderous intent. How about brainwashing? The blonde guy's whole body began to tremble. The black-haired brat, who couldn't even save himself, chimed in. Stop, one bluntly declared and threw him to the ground. I'm not stopping. His smile now was enough to scare the black-haired guy. Stop. I gave you guys a chance. Then he turned and squeezed the guy's mouth again. The black-haired guy's whole body began to tremble. More importantly, in the bag these two were carrying, it seemed like they were trapping a living creature.